Hello everybody and welcome back to the action of the Shanghai Masters as we now have the newly crowned World Champion of 2025 Zhao up against Ding Zhuhui, the Shanghai Dragon, and it is gonna be, well, a potential rematch for what happened at the Crucible in 2026 as Ding just was unable to get himself over the finish line, and although he got those opening couple of sessions up to a very good closing stage, but in the end Zhao was just a little bit too strong for him, but didn't really stop him from losing out to Sean Murphy in the quarterfinal stage. Murphy that has managed to come back from Joey Long's struggles and he's now going to be up against either Weezer or Si Xiaowei in the quarterfinal battle. Of course, that match is going to be played alongside ourselves, but ultimately 4 players from China, something that you would probably expect to see into the Shanghai Masters, but ultimately we have seen a couple of players from China to get eliminated already, but most of them actually managed to progress so far. Now we are going to have 2 derbies of China, and ultimately we're going to have to find out who's going to be well, the strongest of them all, to be fair, you have to say, because Zhao is going to be looking at the potential chance of getting the first invitational trophy since he's managed to get that crown in 2025. Of course, he has managed to win the World Grand Prix, the Tour Championship, and the Players Championship as well. Not exactly a new crown anymore, no, but he was in 2025. But ultimately, you have to say, we have now had 4 different world titles for 4 different players there. Luca Brissell started off the trend in 2023, and then he's been joined by another European player, Karen Wilson, in 2024, before we have seen Chinese players finally emerge onto the scene of being the world champions, Zhao Xington, and later the following year, of course, was Weezer. Xington now sits world number 3, looking to try and catch up to Neil Robertson. Of course, that wouldn't be possible into the format of an invitational event, but as we get to the China Open, as it returns, and Robertson was certainly the latest player to win that tournament in 2019, he's still going to be looking to try and make a little bit of a dent in that gap to Judd Trump that he has. And of course, Trump is going to be losing those 500,000 worth of ranking points due to Saudi Masters not being on the tour anymore. So there is going to be a real opportunity for Zhao Xington especially to try and get himself as the world number 1, the first time ever for that to be the case in his aspect, of course, despite him being the UK champion in 2021. But also, you have to say, Robertson will have a couple of those points to defend potentially in some of those tournaments as we get away from China and onto the English Open, British Open, and tournaments like that. But of course, Xington would not have played in those tournaments 2 years ago, he still would have been recovering from his 2-year ban that he got in 2022. Now then, Weezer against Si Jiaowei and Zhao Xington against Ding Jiaowei is going to be a very similar sort of a matchup because the odds should be exactly the same for both of them. You know, Si Jiaowei and Ding Jiaowei had to get through an opening round. Si Jiaowei has beaten another player from China, Pang Junxu, and it was, I wouldn't say a dominant win, but he felt like the one that he had under control, especially towards the latter stage, and getting himself through to a win of 6 frames to 4 certainly got the job done out there. And of course, he wouldn't expect from anything else from Ding, as he was up against the wild card, and despite losing out on a couple of those frames, still got the job done 6 frames to 2. When it comes to the head-to-head in between the two players, they have played around 7 matches on the official tournaments on the snooker tour, and 4 of them have been won by Ding. Of course, the 4 of the ones that have been very much the matches that have started the head-to-head, but the 3 most recent ones have actually all been won by Zhao Xington, and a couple of them have been held in China as well. You have to go back to that Crucible campaign of Xington winning 13 frames to 9. And then, of course, same as Wilson and O'Sullivan having a bit of a history in Shanghai Masters earlier last season. And then we have seen very much Zhao Xington against Ding Jiaowei. That match has taken place beforehand, and it was very much Ding that has found himself to be on the back foot throughout the entirety of that match, losing out by 6 frames to 1 in the end. So we're going to have to wait and see whether that's going to be a bit of a repetition there, or is it going to be a bit of a different story for Zhao Xington to try and well, set the standards here, of course. He has had a bit of a, I would say, quiet start to the previous season. You know, he didn't really get up and underway until, you know, he's had that Riyadh Season Championship win over Neil Robertson, but due to a very specific format, you probably have to say he didn't really have to wait until the World Grand Prix, until he got himself into a final, having a couple of those semi-final losses against Karen Wilson at the Shanghai Masters earlier last season, and then against Weezer in the International Championship as well. So, ultimately, it will be down to him to try and outplay Ding Jiaowei. Whether he's going to be able to do that or not, we'll have to wait and see, but ultimately Ding hasn't got a lot to lose when it comes down to, you know, just having to try and make sure he's going to be taking this game to Zhao Xington. 2 very similar styles there, you have to say. Both of the players don't really like to take a step backwards and play a safety shot, but to be fair, I feel like the evolution of Zhao Xington over the last couple of seasons has certainly seen him, you know, become a player a little bit like Watchalong, where he tried to evolve his game from that brilliant 19 and 20 campaign. Now, there is going to be a handshake in between the players, and ultimately, it will be Zhao Xington to break off here and get us underway in the first frame. He is, as I say, he's going to be seen as a firm favourite, but you must never underestimate Ding Jiaowei, and when it comes down to these 2 players, you can always have one of those bad days in the office for Zhao Xington, and if Ding Jiaowei is going to be up and underway very nicely and try and use that wildcard match yesterday that he has played very much to his advantage, then he could still be causing Zhao Xington a lot of trouble, looking to try and play Neil Robertson into the quarterfinal stage. As now then, after the break-off shot, we can see Ding Jiaowei getting himself a chance to go for a long red into the corner. The angle is going to be sweeping that cue ball around the black, beautifully taken in relation to the red, manages to avoid the contact on all the reds and colours with the cue ball, and he's going to be positioned very nicely indeed for the green to be taken into the left middle, and a sign of potentially things to come there. You can probably count, you know, those safety shots to be played per frame on your fingers, because this is going to be all-out attack, as has been shown already by Ding Jiaowei, and for now, played that green pretty well. You know, he did have the cue ball slightly on the wrong side of it, which has made him to play the shot with side cushions to be used. Now just having a look to see if he's going to be able to try and free up the pink spot as soon as he possibly can. Or is he going to have to try and revolve that cue ball towards the blue, making sure that the cue ball is not going to be moving too much out there. Now the referee clearly trying to direct someone too excited in the crowd, but ultimately, it's a nice little position here for Ding to try and score some points. I wouldn't say this is going to be, you know, a straightforward frame win, but at the same time, if he gets himself through this early phase, gets the pink and the black to be sorted out with not too many reds in between, the cue ball and the target color, then he's certainly going to have a chance to try and get far away here. But, 89% of you still think it's going to be Zhao Xingtong's show to see here. And as I said, I probably agree with it. And, the fact that Ding is getting himself nicely lined up for a potential chance to win the first frame doesn't really mean a lot, because we have seen Ding, be exceptional in the first couple of frames, in the first 3 frames as well, both against Zhao Xingtong, against Judd Trump, and then it all seems to come away from Ding when we get to the middle part of the match. And for now, the referee's just trying to desperately figure out where the pink is going to go, whether it's going to be, underneath the back, or is he going to be able to squeeze the pink in between those reds? And it seems to be just having to go and place the pink under those reds. So for now, he's going to have to settle for the black and the blue to be the main 2 colors for him to try and make this break around. But ultimately, a very important season, by the way, in the career of Ding Junhui. He's not quite going to be in the era of John Higgins, Mark Williams, and Ronnie O'Sullivan. By the way, talk about John Higgins. Once again, how does he do that? Having a decider on the black against Jack Lisowski. Jack went for that long red, long shot on the black. Couldn't quite execute that one, but it always seems to be when there is a decider and there is all down to the pressure shot there always seems to be only one man with the name of John Higgins coming out on top. But yeah, very important match and season coming up here for Ding Junhui, because when it comes down to, probably even the situation in the rankings here, of course, the Shanghai Masters is going to be all down to the prize money here and the pride of the trophy to be on the line as well. But you have to say, he has found himself now on the verge of dropping out of the top 16, and you feel like, with what we've seen of him last season, struggling to get himself through to, can't really think if he's been to any one of those ranking semi-finals. He's certainly been to a couple of quarterfinals here in the Shanghai against Zhao Xingtong, as we mentioned. I think he was in the quarterfinals of the German Masters as well. And then he had a couple of extra tournaments, but I'm pretty sure he didn't get to the last 4 at any stage of the last season, and now played a bit of a unlucky shot there, I would say, because he's been doing everything right, trying to brush off the pink and the main bunch of reds with the cue ball, but in the end, he does seem to have played a bit of a back trick with him. And, well, once again, you would expect him to go for this green, despite having the cue ball to be on the bulk line. And how does it look? It doesn't look too good, because I feel like the backhand jaw is going to be greeting the green, and it is going to come and stay on the table. So then, Ding Junhui runs himself out of position. Still feels like he was able to go for that green, but in the end, just not able to cut that green enough into the pocket. And, of course, whilst doing that, he has run Zhao Xingtong a little bit wide in this red that he was playing for himself. So then, Xingtong needs to make sure he gets this red into the yellow pocket, and it does seem like he's missed that one by a long, long way. So it will be interesting to see if he's left the same red away, or is it going to be down to a red to be taken into the left corner here by Ding Junhui? Once again, a very interesting player there, Zhao Xingtong, for you to study in relation to the way that he plays the game. Sometimes it felt like those opening couple of frames could be very, very important for him, because, if he gets himself into that early momentum, as Ding Junhui overcuts the red by an absolute mile, wasn't really the harder shot that he's going to have to play in the entire match, and probably wasn't even as hard as the shot that Zhao Xingtong has missed previously. But ultimately, Ding was unable to make advantage of that mistake from Zhao Xingtong, and now it'll be back down to Zhao to try and make the most out of either the safety shot, or you could try and unleash the power of going for the red into the yellow pocket and making sure for himself that he's got a great opportunity of trying to play that cue ball in behind the blue, get himself positioned for the green to be taken. And look at that lovely little strike. He didn't need that pocket to be 1 millimeter wider than the position of the red. That was struck absolutely crisp there from Zhao Xingtong, and this is a lot more like it from the 2025 world champion, as he gets himself in amongst those reds. And when I say in amongst them, he only has got one more to be available after the green is about to disappear. And then he's going to have to go for a Zhao Xingtong special. Doesn't want that cue ball to overrun for the reds. And to be fair, as is often the case, he's judged the pace to an absolute perfection. The cue ball king when it comes down to the positional success. And you have to say, similar player to Wu Yize if you compare the two world champions from China, but you feel like Weeze is a lot more clinical when it comes down to the pot success. He's a lot more like Welsh potting machine of Mark Williams, but when it comes down to Zhao Xingtong, you can see that correlate, or even Watchalong to be fair, because he's got a brilliant Q power, sometimes to get him out of trouble. Long range shots are very much on par with Murphy and Trump when it comes down to the previous season. Probably could put Xingtong in that equation as well, but you feel like that first part of the season probably cost him a little bit dearly, as he now tries to go for a rest shot. And it's twice now he's backed down a bit, so he's just feeling that the blue is getting slightly in the way. And he needs to get plenty of Q action on the white here because he wants to try and bounce the white away from the bowl cushion and get himself positioned for either one of the bowl colours, the traffic lights as you want to call them, to be positioned. But he's missed the red altogether. Well, maybe thinking about that a little bit too much, and certainly felt like he's done about as much of work as he could have to himself and done himself a little bit of justice in relation to that position on the red. In the end, clearly wasn't enough for him to be getting away with it, and now missing out on that red, leaving out a chance here for Ding Zhuo to be taking the same red away into the yellow pocket. And then, of course, Ding would have to be the player having to make contact with those reds. But once again, Ding's pot success just letting him down a little bit, and he's now missed two of those chances that have been left to him by Zhao Xingtong. Zhao, of course, himself wasn't perfect with a couple of shots that he's played. One into the yellow pocket that he missed, and one, of course, into, well, two of the shots that he missed. Both of them, of course, have been going into the yellow pocket. And now then, you can't see that red that Ding Zhuo has just missed, so he's going to have to be the player, potentially, to try and make contact with the remaining 8 reds at the bottom part of the table here, as we still have 99 points available for both of the players. And ultimately, he just decides to try and roll that cue ball towards the reds, making sure that he's not going to have too many of them to be far away from each other. But ultimately, needed to make sure he avoided the touching ball, which he has done. So now then, it's an interesting situation here that Ding Zhuo finds himself in, because he felt like he's probably going to have to just roll the cue ball towards those reds, because he can't really roll the white away towards the top part of the table and try and put Zhao Xingtong under a little bit of scrutiny here, because he might find himself on the back foot here if he's going to try and get that cue ball too close to the red, and therefore allow Xingtong to be the one dictating the run of play, but ultimately having the chance to pot the red into the yellow or the green pocket. Depends on what his decision is going to be, so no surprise that Ding just carefully decides to play the cue ball away from the reds to make sure that he's not going to have any temptation away for Zhao Xingtong. But ultimately still does put Ding Zhuo slightly on the back foot here, because he does allow Zhao Xingtong to be seeing that red at the top edge of the table, and therefore potentially Zhao could be the player here to try and send that red down to the bottom of the table and allow himself to be the one, as I say, still being in charge of that safety play for a while. And, well, he's played a risky shot here, and I'm not sure he's got the line of that red that he's going to help him, because even though he got that cue ball to be stunned perfectly onto the ball cushion, he got a little bit too close to just trying to play a double into the right corner, and therefore allowed that red to be staying, I wouldn't say over the pocket, but certainly in the position where you would expect Ding Zhuo to punish his younger compatriot here. You can see 35 centimeters there in between that red and the right corner pocket, but 300 centimeters in between the cue ball and the red, so plenty of distance for it to go wrong. And of course, still needs to make sure he's going to be lined up perfectly on the black. The red is in nicely. Well, I said on the black he wants to be lined up for. He is going to be on the pink. And I tell you what, that might actually develop a couple of things here, because if he gets that pink eliminated, he does look like he's going to be positioned in a situation where he's going to be forcing that cue ball to go down the table rather than towards the top there, which would have been the preferred case scenario for him. But yeah, to be fair, even if he gets that pink to be eliminated, he still probably has to send that cue ball towards the reds, which he has done, and it's not a bad effort at all. And in fact, I'm pretty sure he's going to have a chance of taking the red away into the right middle or to the right corner. So plenty of spin there, and not bad accuracy, I'd have to say as well, leaving himself a chance. The pink is going to be probably getting... I tell you what, the referee is not going to be the best friend of Ding Zhuo here, because the red that he would have been looking to try and play into the corner is now going to be very much invisible to him because of the pink. Well, I mean, the decision is going to have to be made by the referee, but it does seem like the decision has been made and the pink is going to be tied up towards the cue ball. Therefore, leaves Ding Junhui with only one opportunity to go for the red into the right middle of an attacking display. And when I say one opportunity, I'm not sure if he can actually do anything here in relation to the safety play, because it's probably one of the weirdest positions that you can find yourself on a snooker table, because you are surrounded by reds, which means you can't just tap the cue ball onto one of them, because inevitably, you are going to try and develop the position slightly here. But how on earth do you get the cue ball away from those reds here is going to be another matter. Even the touching ball probably wouldn't help him, so I feel like he does find himself in a position where he needs to go for this red. But even if he does get this one in, there's still going to be plenty of other things to worry about. But this shot is not going to be an easy one at all. Plenty of thoughts coming into this one, and he's potted that one really, really nicely. And to be fair, he got that cue ball nicely away to be lined up for the blue. And now Ding Junhui is certainly going to be finding himself in a position very, very strong to try and have that opening bid to get the first frame on the board. And despite not being able to do that from the first time of asking, he did force that mistake from Zhao Xington after playing what seemed like a very harmless shot of sending that cube onto the left side rail. Then the mistake came from Zhao himself, and now 14 points later, it does seem like Ding has played a couple of really good shots there, but this one is probably not going to be as highly rated, as he clearly was playing for the blue into the right middle. In the end, he's going to have to try and play this one into the green pocket, so still not quite making the life as easy for himself as he could have been. But for the time being, plays that shot really, really well, and he's still going to be lined up nicely for the red to be taken into the left corner. Mainly arranged so that a Chinese player will play against a non-Chinese player in the final. I'm not sure about it, because I feel like if they've done that, they would have been able to do it a lot better in relation to, we are now seeing two Chinese derbies of Si Xiaowei and Ding Junhui to be featuring against Zhao Xington against Weezer, but I'm pretty sure there is going to be a factor of that as well, because it just depends whether you have the draw and put Karen Wilson to be number one seed because of him winning the tournament last season, or do you try and do it through the rankings, because that way you are going to have the likes of Neil Robertson and Watchalong to be benefiting a little bit more, because they are going to be the world number one and the world number two as it stands. So probably going to have to say, I think it wasn't really done like that. I don't think they were trying to benefit the Chinese players, because if they were, I feel like they would have done it a lot better and made sure they avoided that Zhao Xington against Ding Junhui clash and allowed Ding to be squeezed into that Mark Williams clash or Karen Wilson clash or something like this. But I'm pretty sure they just did it according to the rankings. So, the world number 3 is not really meant to be seeing the world number 4. So I'm pretty sure they've done that pretty accurately and pretty honestly out there as well. So we are going to see a potential chance of, Zhao Xington, Ding Junhui, Si Xiaowei, or Weezer to be meeting the winner of this pair into the final stage. But of course, the winner of this match will play against Neil Robertson to try and be very much the favourite at the top end of the draw. And for now, that's a very strange mistake there from Ding Junhui. And look at that. He has managed to blow the frame wide open, as he now has 59 points ahead of Zhao Xington. And you can see the frustration. He was trying to play for a frame ball, but now he's left the easiest of the positions that he could have possibly imagined there for Zhao Xington. Yes, there's still plenty of work to be done, but if you think about the yellow, it's going to be the only colour out of position. And usually what happens with those positions is that Zhao Xington will absolutely go for the kill and potentially try and do things that he has been doing in the Championship League at the start of the season. Yes, he was unable to make it at the top of his group, which is the only place where you're going to be able to progress to the second stage. But meanwhile, now he's going to have 43 points of a deficit to try and recover from, with 51 points at the table. And once again, I did say the Reds were crowded next to the pink. Well, they're not going to be now, since the red on the right-hand side of the pink is about to be eliminated, and it has been. And you feel like It depends on his judgment call, but he may try and play this cue ball into the red from the left-hand side, remove the red on the left side of the pink completely, and just get himself lined up for the red to be taken into the right corner, which is exactly what he's done. It's a little bit of a tense shot, that, because he had to make sure that he didn't catch any part of the red on the right-hand side, but he's done that really well. Once again, he can't really complain about the cue ball control of someone like Zhao, and now he gets himself a very clean run of just having to put 8 more balls, and then he's going to be very much somehow, you have to say, the winner of the first frame, and it does bring you towards the opening 2 sessions of the Crucible campaign they had against each other. Ding, you have to say, how on earth was he not leading after especially the first session by a lot more than just a single frame out there? Zhao seemed like he had numerous frames like this one throughout that Clash of the Crucible, and now we are going to see a chance of Zhao to try and make it all the way here towards the yellow from the pink. Being pretty smart that he is, having to make sure that he doesn't have to go through the black, because he would have had to cover an extra half a meter or so on the snooker table. Now then, this is the only place that he can go wrong here. It does seem like he's a little bit too straight on the yellow, and he does still need to be lined up for the green. So then, clearly the cue ball is not going to be played towards the side cushion directly, and he's trying to use that ball cushion and get that cue ball onto the side. So he hasn't played that shot superbly well, and it does remind you of the shot that Ding Junhui had to play when he had a 28 points of a lead. Now they're looking to try and pop the green into the left middle. He's gone for the shot into the left corner. He spotted that one brilliantly well, and he's going to be back in prime position for the brown. Nerves of steel there, as you would expect from the Chinese world champion. Now he gets himself 4 balls ahead of himself, and he only needs to pop those, and he's going to be in the clean run for the first frame to be his for the taking with a total clearance. And in the end, a very impressive break indeed from Zhao. Once again, just not being able to get over the finish line. We've seen that so many times there with Ding throughout the entirety of last season, and most of the time he was down to him just not trying to play that safety shot at the end. But of course, you can't really blame him on this occasion. It was just purely, a pure unforced error there that you have to say we've seen, because it was a straightforward yellow, and he was trying to play himself for a frame ball. In the end, Zhao is going to be lined up for a frame ball black now, and he does make it 60 points to 53 in the opening frame, and the break of 56 points was more than enough there from Zhao to get himself lined up for the first frame to be won, and it's now Zhao 1, Ding Junhui 0. And once again, something that you can't really say you're going to be surprised with, because we have seen it time and time again. And by the way, talk about pace. It's been 25 minutes since the official match starts. Weezer is nearly 2-0 up there against Si Xiaowei. And, certainly the world champion is trying to get himself off to a very positive start there. All about the break building, of course, and all about trying not to mess around too much with the safety game. He's on a break of 28 points now, after having a break of 60 points in the previous frame. And, it does seem like the 2026 world champ is very much finding his groove out there. But of course, it does make you wonder there whether it is going to be a similar sort of performance at the start of the new season as the world champion for Weezer as he was for Zhao, because when you compare, not really result-wise, but the performance-wise for Zhao and the way that he was playing at the back end of 2025, it was a dreadful form there that he found himself with, losing some really stupid matches out there, and in a very stupid fashion as well. There were moments where you felt like, I think it was the English Open, where you lost to Jordan Brown, the player that hasn't won a match in 10 fixtures of his, and he just got absolutely annihilated by him 4 frames to 0, didn't have a chance. Then he had a couple of dodgy performances in the Wuhan Open as well. The Shanghai Masters, he sort of was doing all right there, managed to get through Ding himself by 6 frames to 1, and then was very much trying to make it a great battle with, at that point, the world number 2, Karen Wilson, but, just disappeared and fainted completely in that second session. And, he had a draw 5 frames each with Karen, until he's gone on a losing streak of 5 frames on a bounce. And yeah, we've seen that during numerous occasions in 2025. Champion of champions, just not good enough against Trump. You know, we've seen that in the UK champ, where he had probably the worst performance of the entire season, I would say, of a dreadful campaign against Zhao. And yeah, of course, as soon as he was down to 2026, he was very much a new page for him. Whether it was just down to try and go back to the technique that made him the world champion or not, or whether it was just down to that pressure that he kept on talking about. But he certainly managed to go on a brilliant run at the Player Series and win all 3 Player Series events of the World Grand Prix, Players Championship and the Tour Championship before eventually not having the best sort of campaigns at the Crucible, but still losing out to the eventual runner-up of Sean Murphy. I'm pretty sure you can't say that was a bad effort of the campaign either. Now then, Ding Junhui had a break-off shot, and you have to say, he didn't really have a good one here. He's left the red now for Zhao Xingtong to be taken into the left middle. He doesn't miss those. Let's see how well is he managed to judge the pace of the cue ball, and the answer is, as it is always going to be with at least 90% of that success, he's got that one absolutely spot on. Look at how well he's managed to get that cue ball through the gap in between the yellow and brown. Got that cue ball to be bouncing away from the ball cushion and position as he was placing that cue ball with his hand onto the green, just about right angle to try and force it through the side cushion, and now get himself towards that zone of, you know, the reds and the blacks to be available. Once again, getting the break of 4 points, and now looking to go for the red and black combinations for a while now. And once again, similar position to the one that Ding had at the opening at the opening part of that frame. But ultimately, of course, he's going to have a bit more experience when he comes down to having that greater bit, not really experience, but ability to try and make that position to be sorted out in a single shot there, which is exactly what he's done. You know, even though he did have at least 3 or 4 reds available to him, he decided to send that cue ball into the bunch of reds straight away. And you can't say that worked out badly for him at all, because he always knew he was going to have a red available to him into the left corner. That's exactly why he's played that shot, and now allowing to be lined up for the black into the right corner here. So forcing that cue ball through the shot on the black, and just probably getting that one lined up on the right hand side of those reds. And well, tell you what, he's now going to have a very much a wide variety of a menu ahead of himself, because he's got reds all over the table here, and the only thing that he has to worry about is, of course, try and not get himself confused with whichever red he's going to be playing for, but ultimately just needs to try and avoid having unnecessary contact with the cue ball. Just getting through a tight space, whether it's going to be a positional shot for the black or the red. I don't feel like he's going to need to be using the blue for a while now, because of how well he's managed to get those reds to be positional. Though, one thing that I would say, that in the opening part of this frame, which I'd probably say we're still at, he needs to be careful of, so many of those reds being so close to each other. And that's probably the reason why he decided to go for the blue now, just give himself a little bit of breathing space. Because the black being a lot closer to those reds, sometimes it could be a great advantage, because you don't have the cue ball. You don't have the need for the cue ball to travel that far away. But this time around, you feel like it will be a lot more down to just finding that open space, getting those bunches of reds to be sort of separated away from each other. And once he gets down to at least 7 or 6 reds, then surely he's going to have plenty of gaps in between those reds, and therefore making his life even easier than he already is at the moment. And it doesn't seem like he's struggling with it one bit. Once again, 35 points scored effortlessly there from Zhao Xingtong. And for now, it does seem like it is the battle in between the world number 3 and the world number 4, even though they're not playing against each other. But they do seem like having a bit of a race in relation to who's going to be the first to get themselves through to the quarterfinal. As we've seen, Weezer and Zhao Xingtong have both managed to win the opening frames, and both of them have had a decent opportunity to try and get this second frame on the board as well. Now then, Zhao Xingtong just getting one more red away, trying to force that cue ball onto the black. He didn't play that shot too well. And, well, I mean, if he's got the pink available, it doesn't really matter to him, to be fair. And he does, but he's going to have to try and bridge over the red here. But look at that, opens the cue ball nicely and positions that ping to be heading perfectly towards the middle. No chance of catching any of those jaws, and in the end, he has managed to recover from a slight hiccup there that he had on the previous positional misjudgment. So the one thing that we have seen Zhao to perform certainly plenty of times there was the century break during that campaign at the Championship League matches, which so far have been the only matches that the world champion of the past of the 2 seasons ago have managed to achieve, because he of course didn't have to play any of the qualifiers just yet, because the top 16, according to the new format of the WST, are now going to have to play those qualifying matches right before the tournament starts. So that's going to include the Zhensheng Open, which is going to be a great piece of news there for Zhao Xingtong. Of course, being born in Zhensheng of China, it is now going to be very much the home tournament of the Cyclone, and he's going to be probably the #1 player to enjoy that one, as you would bet that he knows everything about that place, everything about the arena, and everything about what it takes to be a great snooker player in that particular area. And of course, in the meantime, he has managed to absolutely destroy this position, and 63 points later, he does find himself being lined up for the frame ball, trying to get himself a 70 points of a lead here, whilst only having 67 at the table. So despite having to use a couple of those cheap colours at the opening starting point of the frame, he's still going very healthy for a 137 of a break, and that of course includes going for the blue a couple of times, and he does look like he's going to have to use the blue for one more time. Doesn't want the cue ball to be heading too close to the side cushion, which he will be. So now of course he doesn't have to worry about the frame, he can focus entirely on that century break to be made, and of course the WSD and the WPBSA have removed the 100 century bonus, but you still feel like with him being very much a fan favourite, especially here in the crowd, it is going to be very much down to trying to entertain the crowd, the fans, and just enjoy being amongst those reds, amongst the colours, and being at the top of his game there, which you still feel like he didn't really have to be so far. He had a decent clearance. Overall, probably comes as standard there in the package of Zhao Xingtong, but ultimately, he's had a very good break here of 82 points and counting in the frame #2, and now he is going to be only a handful shots away from making it a century break #1 there for himself. And even though that percentage from 89 of Zhao Xingtong is going down to 79, you feel like it's only going to get better from this stage for him, because already getting himself a 2-0 lead, although he did not seem happy with the way the cue ball reacted to the previous shot that he had. Now being a slightly tight position, having a tight position on the red, and well, it's not going to be a century break, so he's going to absolutely follow the footsteps of Karen Wilson yesterday. Of course, Wilson already at that point against Ronnie O'Sullivan had a century to his name before making breaks of 89, 90 and 91, all separately in every single one of those frames. As I say, Karen Wilson probably had the most consistent performance of the season of anyone, if you think about it, especially when you talk about the grade of the opposition and the magnitude of the opposition that Ronnie O'Sullivan, of course, would have been to himself. But now, as you can see, the average break of 73 points for Zhao Xingtong is going to be a great addition to his collection, and he's now going to have breaks of 53 and 56, I should say, and 90. To be getting himself a 2-0 lead here against Ding Zhuhui, as the Cyclone is ready to be very much away and into the quarter-final stage, if he is going to be able to find 4 more frame wins in the remaining up to 9 frames being available. So then, let's have a very quick look to see how Weeze is going to be doing against Si Xiaowei. You feel like he's probably not going to struggle too much from what we've seen so far, and it is going to be indeed a carbon copy situation there. Weeze and Zhao Xingtong both have a very confident lead of 2 frames to 0 against both Si Xiaowei and Ding Zhuhui. And then Weeze has managed to finish off the second frame with a break of 64 points, not allowing Si Xiaowei to score any of those points out there. So the campaign that Ding and Si have had against the Wildcard and the Pang Jingsu respectively does seem like, it's going to be a little bit different to what we are seeing here right now, and ultimately could still be a little bit of pressure on both of these shoulders. And to try and perform to a bit of a higher standard if you compare of what we've seen from both Ding and C so far. But of course, you can't really compare a wildcard and Pang to the level of snooker that Zhao Xington and Weezer are going to be showing. But ultimately, Ding Junhui didn't really have to worry about that one too much in the first frame. He did have only 2 more shots for him to try and play. And he would have been the frame winner by all means and by any stretch of imagination. But in the end, that yellow mistake seemed to have proved very costly for him. It wasn't the only mistake that he has made in this match so far, but certainly was the one that allowed Zhao Xington to have that boost ahead of the frame number 2. And then, the total clearance of 56 points, followed up by a lovely little break of 90 points as well, has allowed him now to stretch his lead over to 2 frames. And now it is going to be the Cyclone to break off once again for the second time here in this match. And of course, we all remember what happened in the first one. Ding Junhui was able to, at that point, take charge and take full control of 90% of that frame by taking a brilliant long red into the right corner. And he's got one of those available again. You feel like the line of the cue balls would travel and be lined up in behind the black there into the same pocket. It's going to be very difficult though, because of the red being in the way. And the last thing that you want to do is go for this risky red and potentially, of course, have that chance of a risk of not making the potting angle and still not be 100% confident that you are going to have the black to follow it up with. But once again, just like it was in the first frame, Ding has decided not to try his luck. And he's going to be positioning himself for the bold colours there after taking a wonderful strike there into the corner and allowing himself to be positioned here for the brown to be taken in towards the yellow pocket. So then once again, digging down on the white and looking to try and take the cue ball on a journey towards the left side cushion here. Play that shot pretty well. Now then, a very, very similar position to the one that Zhao Xington has found himself in charge of and was able to execute a break of 90 points out of in the previous frame. So then, just taking this red carefully in towards the right middle, making sure he's got the chance of taking the black away into the right corner. And then he's still going to have plenty of those reds to choose from. I mean, it depends on how many of them, to be fair, in relation to, he's got a bunch of 6 reds there with a mini triangle, potentially blocking the path of a couple more of those reds to be taken. But he's certainly going to have at least 3 more reds to be taken with presumably the black there if he wants to add to the tally of 13 points as well. And you can see that he's not too far away in relation to the points that he has scored in the entire match there, but in relation to the way that he was able to sort of stay in charge and stay in control of those points and the way that he was able to distribute them across those break opportunities, he hasn't really done too well. So he needs to try and step up his game and make sure he will be one of those frames where Zhao Xington is going to play just one of those shots there, because you feel like if Ding doesn't really win this frame from a single visit to the table, then he needs to make sure he does keep Zhao Xington very quiet, which is incredibly difficult to achieve there. Now then, Ding just having a look to see if there's going to be one more red for him to be taking into the right corner and the left middle. Receiving confirmation to himself, showing that to the camera too. Now then, he's going to be having twice as little points that he has scored in comparison to Zhao Xington, but in relation to this frame, it doesn't look too shabby for him here. Now just trying to play that cue ball past the red without touching it, making sure that he leaves himself just about as straight on those reds as he possibly can. As the referee was trying to respot the red onto the black ball spot, realised his mistake pretty quickly and gone back and got the correct colour out of the pocket. So then 30 points is the lead here. You probably have to say, from what we've seen in the first frame, it doesn't really matter how much the points lead is going to be in relation to as soon as it's going to go over the points that Zhao Xington is going to have available at the table, then you can sort of start to think about saying that Ding Junhui is going to be the frame winner. But until that point, there's always going to be a chance of, unfortunately, you have to say, Ding making that unforced error. But for now, he's about to make another red to be available to him. Although, I mean, it's an interesting situation that he finds himself at, because he has got another red into the open play, but I feel like it's either going to be straight on the ping. He's got no chance of taking the blue or the black in this position, so he has to go for the ping. And the question is, what sort of angle does he have to try and get that cue ball to be closer to the red? So the red clearly goes past the black into the corner, into the right part of the table, which clearly is going to help him on his course to be scoring a couple more of those points. So he just needs to try and take advantage of the position in full throttle, and he wasn't able to do that, even though he sort of managed to do some damage limitation on that red. It seems like the elbow had a little bit of a twitch there for him, and now it is once again going to be another break of sub 50 out there for him, and once again allowing Zhao Xingtong to be coming back to the table. The same red is now going to be playable for Zhao Xingtong, and this time around the Cyclone just carefully drops that one into the corner and now gets himself positioned perfectly for the black to be taken into the corner. I mean, I'll tell you what, one thing that is going to hurt there for Ding is that Zhao Xingtong now has got one chance to try and spread those reds away from each other, and it probably would be typical if he was able to take this one chance and execute it to perfection. And in the end, well, I wouldn't say it's perfection, but I would say he's done a pretty good job there of getting himself on the red. Look at that. From the side cushion, the black is going to go straight into the heart of the pocket, into the pink, spread those three reds away from each other, and leaves himself with a decent opportunity now to be taking the reds into the right middle. So then a little bit of backspin here to be added on the cue ball. Just had to make sure he missed that front jaw, which he has, and allowed himself to be set up with a better angle by striking that red very close towards the front jaw, and as I say, giving himself a little bit of time to work out the position across a couple of points there in relation to the lead that Ding Junhui has had to himself. So then 15 points that Zhao Xingtong has scored. He's still going to have two more reds to be taken with either pink or black. Both of these colours are now going to be joining the bold colours and the blue. So all six colours available now for Zhao Xingtong, and once again, you feel like whenever there is a bit of a misjudgment on the pace and the position of the cue ball, you feel like this is going to be intentional, and it was. He was trying to get into the bunch of reds, and he has done so. I'm not sure whether, once again, the backspin on the cue ball and trying to get in behind the red for the left middle was intentional, but if it was an absolute genius in the making, because apart from that red, Zhao Xingtong had absolutely nothing left, but with that red, he's about to have, once again, one of the easiest positions that you could dream about for a clearance. And once again, as I say, you know, he entered this position with a very difficult red as the introduction. He had one chance from the black on the following shot to try and make some sort of advantage of the huge pack of reds, also close to each other. And now all of a sudden, he does find himself to be only 15 points behind, and by far the favourite for this frame to be one to his name as well. So then just carefully going for this red with plenty of backspin to be added on the cue ball. Gets himself through to a chance on the black to be taken into the right part of the table. And once again, the black is going to be taken here with a little bit of extra pace. You know, he's left himself a little bit of the angle to try and get that power away from the cushion. And all of a sudden, that mighty lead of 44 points. And at that point, he felt like there was only going to be, you know, one chance for Zhao Xingtong to try and make this work for himself. He's about to find himself in the lead here if he does get this black in. But I'm pretty sure this time around, getting so far away from being straight on the black wasn't really intentional, so it's going to be interesting to see what he's going to try and attempt here. And in the end, just going for a sensible option of not trying to rush the position too much, as he now finds himself in the lead for the third consecutive frame. So going for that remote red at the top part of the table, clearly he's going to try and get himself positioned top side of a blue, but he hasn't done that well. Bit of a blunder that from Zhao Xingtong, because you know, if you're going to have a minor angle being top side of a blue, all of a sudden, you've got a straightforward clearance ahead of yourself now. It's going to be a bit different and a bit more difficult for him, because now he's going to have to try and go for this blue to be taken whilst minimizing the pace of the cue ball. So once again, all down to damage limitation. Of course, it's going to be another break of 50 plus, so he maintains that record of making a break of 50 plus in every single one of those frames. But I'll tell you what, I mean, he's got a decision here to make ahead of himself because he's got two reds right next to each other, next to the pink spot as well, to be taken. He's got one of them, which is going to be an easier cut, but if he takes that red closer to the pink, he's going to have to collide with another red, and that's what he had to do. At least that's what he felt like. And in the end, has he managed to get away with that one? Well, he did to an extent, but it's a bit of a weird mistake that from Zhao because he sort of came away from absolutely nowhere. And now, Ding Zhuowei finds himself only 7 points behind, and but an easier red available. But the reason why I said Zhao Xingtong sort of got away with it is that the other red has gone onto the side cushion, and as he was at the starting point of that break from Zhao Xingtong, Ding is only going to have one chance to try and get, well, he needs to try and cannon that red out of the way. Otherwise, he's going to be getting himself lined up for a double. And I felt like he hasn't really left himself an option. Way too straight on the blue. So unless he's going to be the brown, which I'm not sure it will do any good to him either. Straight on the green. A wrong angle on the pink as well. So, well, unless he wants to go like level extreme and go for the yellow, try and send that cube on a journey around the table twice, then it's going to have to be a double, because I don't really consider a safety shot when he comes down to Ding Zhuowei. But this might have to be the time there, because he can't afford to lose this frame. And if he goes for the double, then it's going to be all down to if he makes this one or not, because if he doesn't, I feel like the ball run hasn't really been his strongest point so far today. And, well, I do have to say, it's always surprising to see Ding Zhuowei playing a safety shot, but you feel like that was the only reasonable and sensible thing that he had to do. Now then still finds himself only 1 point behind of Zhao Xingtong. And Zhao now leaves it for the referee to have a look to see if he can get past the pink without touching it towards that red. Or is there going to be a realistic chance for the cue ball to be respotted back into its original position? So then, Zhao Xingtong clearly felt like he could see enough of that red, but he got fortunate there because he didn't catch the red in the way that he intended to, or at least didn't look like that to me. But the green safe, which probably is going to be no help to either one of the players, because no matter whether you're Zhao Xingtong or Ding Zhuowei, you'll most certainly need the green to try and get yourself this frame to be won. And now then, I mean, I say Zhao Xingtong got away with this one. Ding is putting a lot of thought into a potential chance of going for this red into the yellow pocket anyway, even though it's going to be right at the top end of the D there, of the D line. So whether that's going to be a good enough thing for him to invite the pressure there from Ding, or whether he's just thinking about the way to try and get the red safe and as far away from the cue ball as it's possible for him. In the end, the latter is the answer. And yeah, he's just trying to make it another safety shot there. So for the time being, clearly willing to play the patience game now in the third frame. And of course, seeing that, Zhao Xingtong has made the mistake the last time he's played that safety shot. Let's see if that's going to be very much another thing in the making here. Oh, look at how thin he got the contact on that red. I mean, that was such a high risky shot there. High risk of a shot that he's played, because if he misses that red entirely, you feel like that's going to be a free ball in the making, and then all of a sudden, Ding has got all the chances of trying to get at least a chance and an attempt of a clearance on the green. And if he sorts out the green positioning, then he's certainly going to be the lead player of trying to make this frame to be won by himself out there. But for now, gets himself out of trouble very nicely, set up by Zhao Xingtong, and yeah, still gets himself positioned in a 50-50 of a frame there. In fact, if you want to say 51-50 in relation to probably both the percentage and the points that you can see, because you're going to have to give the slight edge away to Zhao Xingtong, because, well, at least he had, I was just about to say he has got an extra shot advantage because of how close the cue ball and the red were to each other, but he sort of fumbled that one away. And now we'll be down to the cue ball to be seeing the red very nicely, not too far away from it either. So then Ding having a very close look to see if he's going to have plenty of room not to be touching the green. But, well, I don't think he's played this shot as he intended. I mean, he got the cue ball to be pretty well lined up for the black ball cushion, but I'm pretty sure the intention would have been to try and get the cue ball in behind the black, whilst getting the red to the top edge of the table. But whatever the plan was, didn't seem to work out too well for him. And now, Zhao looking to go for the red. I mean, once again, he does find himself in a position where he can go for those shots into the yellow pocket without, losing on too much out there. Because even if one of the players inevitably will get the hands on potting this red, then he's still going to have to come away with a very difficult position with the ball colours, with all three of them to be out of position especially. The yellow and green, both to be out of the usual surroundings. And once again, Ding Junhui going for that hype shot there, I would say, but as Zhao discovered in the first frame, it doesn't seem like it's always the right decision for you to make. And once again, just like it was in the first frame, good cue ball, not really good enough in relation to the red positioning. And now Zhao is going to have a chance of potting this red. I don't know why, I don't know how, but he stayed out there, had a bit of a weird wobble. But the bottom line is, the red stays at the table, and Ding now is going to have a chance to try and carefully cut this one in. The position of the brown has been improved dramatically, but it's still very much down to the yellow and green to be the biggest problem here, and the biggest difference between Ding Junhui being the frame winner and allowing Zhao to be having a 3-0 lead of his own. But first and foremost, of course, he needs to make sure he gets this red in, which he has done. Now that how's the cue ball going to be lined up here for? Is he going to be the brown? Is he going to be the blue? Well, it's not going to be the blue, that's for sure. So he's going to have to be the brown there, it would seem, because the black is way too far away. I mean, he's thinking about the blue here, which I have to say I'm not convinced about it, but he clearly seems like that's the way for him to try and progress forward. But once again, he's going to have to judge the pace of the cue ball absolutely spot on. Let's see how well he's done that. The last thing that he wants is to be straight. And he's not going to be straight on this yellow here, which is good news. Well, another question that has to be answered here as well for him is that does he have enough of the angle to force that cue ball to go around the side and the ball cushion and for it to be behind the green? The answer is yes, he does. He had a brilliant angle to get right in behind the green, get that one closer towards the left middle, and now he does certainly find himself in a position of trying to pot the green away and get us through surely to the deciding frame of the mini session here. And still be in there with a chance, despite not playing by far his best snooker of the recent couple of years. Still going to be in there with a decent chance there to try and make it at 2 frames each there for the intermission. And worst case scenario, he's of course going to have a 3-1 lead to try and recover from, which felt like if Zhao was able to win this frame with how tight it was, then he would have won pretty much every single one of those frames in relation to the formats. But look at this for a shot there. And I don't mean that in a positive way. What has Ding Junhui done there in relation to the pace? I mean, he's had the brown over the pocket, so he didn't seem like he was going to have anything to do out there at all. But completely shanked the pace of the cue ball here. And, well, it's going to be very interesting to see the way that he's going to try and get himself out of here, because he literally has to bridge over the pink spot, the blue being on its own spot. And, well, if he's going to go for an attacking shot here, it's going to be a very difficult one for him to manage. He's gone for it. He's missed it. Now let's see where the blue's going to finish. And somehow, Zhao still does find himself to be alive out there. And, well, it's one of those situations where he had his own funeral booked twice there in this frame, and he's still very much a dead man walking. He's got 14 points to try and recover from, and he's got 18 points ahead of himself here. Once again, trying to find the black to be the cushion in between the cue ball. We'll see next. Running next in the UK. I mean, you have to ask himself. I'm pretty sure, I have to ask him, I would say, because I'm pretty sure he's the only guy that knows about it. And, you're going to have the China Open. You're going to have the Wuhan Open as well. I'm not sure we're going to see him at the Whole Nations, because we haven't seen him there for 2 and a bit seasons. So very much doubt that he'd be bothered to be turning up out there, especially since he doesn't live in the UK. And hence the reason why he hasn't been participating in the Masters for 2 seasons now, ever since his triumph over Ali Carter. And I'm pretty sure he does go to the Barbican at York, which is a little bit strange because he doesn't like to go to London, but I'm pretty sure there is going to be another reason for that, as there's always is with Ronnie. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be very much focused on the Asian part of the tour, which, you know, Asian means Chinese in the World Snooker. Sometimes we are going to have the Hong Kong Grand Prix, and of course mainly it's going to be down to the Shenzhen Open, China Open, International Championship, World Grand Prix, World Open, all of those to be held in China there. And apart from that, you're going to have the home nations, you're going to have the German Masters, which, to be fair to him, he did play in the previous season, as Ding Junhui goes for a very risky shot there on the blue, trying to get that one closer towards the right side cushion. We go to the British Open. I don't think there's a chance in a million years that Ronnie O'Sullivan will go to the British Open, especially since it's a blind draw. And, you know, it's still going to be held in Cheltenham, which is in the UK. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be very little motivation there for him. There's not really a lot of prize money in relation to it. So I feel like British Open is probably going to be even less of a chance there for Ronnie to be heading there. And the only reason for that to be the case is probably going to be down to just the competitive spirit, which I'm not going to say he lacks it at the moment, but probably is not going to be the biggest driving factor of him trying to you know, remain on the World Snooker Tour. But of course, he has said he wants to try, and he's, well, to be fair to him, he's been saying that for a couple of years. Hasn't really changed since, but he has been saying that he wants to try and make sure he's going to be playing more and more snooker here. But he said that 2 seasons ago when he hasn't played for 6 months. He's had that last season where he's been skipping tournaments and rarely has been featured in back-to-back tournaments as well. And we'll see if this season is going to be any different. But he has put himself a time frame of this and the next season. And then he's going to reassess the rankings, the situation, the way that he's been winning or not winning at all. And then if, as he says himself, if the game doesn't change, then it's going to be very much the end for him at the 2028 of Sheffield. You would assume that he would play in that one, and he certainly should be, because he said made his feelings very clear out there as Ding Junhui misses out on the attempt for the blue. Yeah, he made his feelings very clear out there, Ronnie, that he's not going to be interested in playing the qualifiers. Will Selby go to the British Open or Wilson? Well, if you're talking about Karen Wilson, I mean, once again, I think when it comes down to Mark Selby, he's probably the most professional and the most, you know, hardworking person that you could possibly imagine of in the UK. So I don't actually think there was an instance in the recent couple of years where we've seen Selby actually skipping tournaments, apart from there wasn't an actual physical or mental reason for it. And look at that for a shot there from Zhao Xington, finding the slimmest of cuts there and finding the jaw of the pocket to get that cue ball perfectly lined up for the pink. And once again, just like it was in the first frame, Ding Junhui was one shot away this time from winning the frame, but in the end, it all is going to come down to exactly the same ending and exactly the same name to be the frame winner, and his name is Zhao Xington. With the 18 points of a clearance, Zhao Xington does win another frame and extend his lead to 3 frames to 0. Where did that come from? Well, it all came from that unforced error on the brown, where he ran himself a little bit wide there, a little bit tight there, I should say, Ding. But it still felt like, you know, you always was going to have the angle to try and position the cue ball on the left or right of the blue. That wasn't really the case. And now he's going to have to try and fight back from being 3-0 down, which is not impossible, but he may as well be for how well he's played and for how clinical when it comes down to those late frame opportunities has been Zhao Xington here. Of course, you could see purely on the stats there, ball spotted 59 to 37, which once again does tell you that it's not been very much one-sided, apart from one of those frames. But even when Ding Junhui had a very clear upper hand on Zhao Xington, he still wasn't able to do anything about it. And yeah, I'm pretty sure the total points scored is going to be 3 times the advantage there for Zhao Xington, because even though we've seen 2 very tight frames, you know, we have also seen a very dominant frame number 2, where we've seen a break of 90 points out there to be made. As you can see, 1100 78,000 worth of ranking points for Zhao Xington. So pretty much quadruple the amount, treble the amount of ranking points that Ding Zhuhui has got. And that's the difference between being the world number 3 and the world number 15 right now, as Ding does find himself on the verge of dropping out of the top 16. As you can see, 100 points exactly. So it just tells you that the first frame was won by barely 5 points or something. That was very much the story of the third frame as well. And then you add the 90 points in between into this the second frame as well. And all of a sudden you do find yourself to be in the position of, no control there of Ding Zhuhui, despite going for that blue and getting very close to potting that color in towards the green pocket. He wasn't able to do that. He had a double kiss. It did seem like he got away with that one. But Zhao Xington had other plans about it and was able to punish him for that mistake, make it costly for him. And in the end, he does find himself to, leave it down to Ding Zhuhui to be breaking off, but ultimately still with a very handy lead there of 3 frames to 0. Now then, Ding Zhuhui with a break off. So let's see if he is going to be able to maintain that record, which of course is quite strange there when it comes down to the first shots of the match so far, because we've seen 2 break-off shots from Zhao Xington. Both of them have led to a brilliant long raid from Ding Zhuhui out there, so you feel like, well, that was very much the reason why he's had the upper hand in frames number 1 and 3, was because he was able to be the one, very much setting the pace earlier on in those frames. But when it comes down to the breaks, 44 being the highest and 28 being the second highest there for Ding, in comparison to 51, 56 and 90 on the radar of Zhao Xington, has simply not been good enough for him. And you have to say, Xington still feels like he didn't really have to get out of the third gear here. And he's got the 4th and 5th very much at his disposal, which he can try and save for the quarterfinals. Or if he feels like he's going to be very much down to, having the necessity to try and use it here, could always try and up his game through a couple of levels, which probably would be down to releasing and unleashing a couple of long shots, which are always very deadly there when it comes to Xington, but also just having a few of those errors when it comes down to break building, which is very much known to be the king of. But once again, I mean, Ding, if there was a frame award in relation to getting that first point on the board, then Ding would be dominating here, probably by 4 frames to 0. In relation to how well he's been able to pot those raids. Look at that. Once again, it was a very much a saint and a sensible safety shot there from Zhao Xington. But still, Ding was able to find that raid, aggressively taken into the left middle. Once again, he comes down to that green to be taken into the left middle. Made a couple of them, missed a couple as well. He's going to make this one perfectly into the heart of the pocket on this occasion. So then once again, for the third time in 4 frames, Ding Zhuhui is going to be the first of the 2 players to get the opening chance here, to be scoring some good points and get those on the board, making himself aware of what's happening with the pink. Probably the most difficult position of everything that we've seen in the first 4 frames, purely for, as we see that red just about disappear there, as he was trying to use a little bit too much of that front jaw. And the reason for that, of course, the position being the most difficult that it has been so far in the match, is the black being covered up from both sides there, and they having the need to use the pink for a while. And the biggest issue here is that the red on the left-hand side of the black is going to be very easy to remove, but the red on the right-hand side of the black is going to be pretty much impossible to remove without actually aiming for it. And the problem with aiming for that particular raid is always going to be down to losing control of the cue ball, because there's going to be 1 extra contact with the reds or the black that you're going to make. But for now, Ding Zhuhui is going to go and potentially put 2 reds with a single shot there. Nearly. Certainly managed to sort out all the issues, if he had any, with those reds to be available to him. Brilliant cue action to be shown there by Ding Zhuhui. So then, the pink is going to go onto the blue spot and stay there for a while. Although I say stay there for a while, Ding has managed to make a great difference in relation to those reds. And let's see if the pink is going to go back onto its own spot. It will. The question is, does the pink pot into either one of the corner pockets? Because if it doesn't, probably made the life even more difficult there for himself. because having the pink there just for the nominal value doesn't really give him a lot more of an advantage here. If anything, it loses him a color to be placed on the blue spot, and the blue is going to be slightly further away from the position of its usual surroundings, so he's clearly got no intention of playing for the pink, which does indicate he's going to have to go for the bold colors of the blue, and he's on the run for the blue here. It's going to be very interesting to see if he does go for the blue, or he's going to force himself to go for the brown here. The brown is going to be the shot to try and get the perfect positioning on the cue ball in relation to the reds at the bottom part of the table, but the blue is an easier shot for you to take. And of course, it does give you the angle that you're going to be looking for in relation to the shot on the red that he's about to take. Now then, very straight, so requires good cueing here from Ding. He's missed those shots before in the frame, and he's in the match, I should say, and he's missed his shot again, just the elbow sticking out, going to the left as he indicates himself. And that's never going to be a nice thing for you, because not only does it put unwanted spin, but also it does make you lose control of the way that you're hitting through the shot, and therefore the cue ball is going to be all the way across the table, but never in the position that you want it to be, trying to pop that red, especially if it's going to be very much down to a straight shot, which is always a lot more difficult than it is if it was a little bit more to the left or the right, that you as a player would have seen the angle of. But in the end, once again, it is going to be a break of just 24 points for Ding Junhui, which gets his average break in the entire match there down to around 27 points here, which is dreadful when you talk about the top 16 players to be competing against each other, but ultimately is even more dreadful when you consider that Zhao Xingtong so far hasn't really shown his best game, and therefore you feel like when he doesn't show that, he's vulnerable and he's there for the taking. But for now, the mistakes have been a lot more out there for the taking here for Ding. As you can see, 30.3 out there, the average break, and Zhao Xingtong has got 53.8. But, the weirdest thing about Zhao Xingtong is that the limitations for the average break for him has often been just running out of colors, because he's been doing that at the end point of a frame, as the cue ball now going to come running down towards the green pocket, as Ding was going for that long red into the corner. Can't say he was too far away from that one, but in the end, clearly didn't fancy himself too much for that particular red, so has to bring the cue ball up to the table all the way. So now then a chance for Zhao Xingtong to use the same red that was missed by Ding previously as a safety only, because he's not going to be able to try and take that shot along the cushion. And in the end, he gets a favourable kiss of those reds, as he sends one of those reds into the back of the others. And the red that he has sent, he's going to stick in there, but ultimately not going to be sticking out there for Ding to be using it as a potential chance to be going for a long red. In the end, he's just going to be looking at the potential blinds to be taken into the corner. Needs to avoid the jaw of the middle pocket, which he has done. And gets the cue ball comfortably beyond the bulk line here. So once again, something that we haven't seen too often here throughout the entire match has been the safety shots to be played in between both of the players. Probably down to the nature of the way that this match has been played so far. It's been 1 hour 10 minutes since he got underway, which for 3 frames and a little bit more, probably not the pace that you would have expected there from the two Spit Kings here. But ultimately, that's gonna be very easily explained by a couple of late battles and late clearances there from Zhao Xingtong to be made in the first and the third frames, and of course the lengthy safety battle, as we can see in the 4th frame as well, to be shared in between the players. As now Ding does find himself in a pretty difficult position here, having that cue ball to be lined up right on the bulk line, but also right in behind the yellow there. So very nice shot there that Zhao Xingtong has played. And it does only leave Ding with one opportunity to try and play the cue ball off into those reds from 2 cushions. Play that shot well. Needed to make sure that he was aiming for... Ideally, he probably was aiming for a 1 cushion escape there. And the reason for that is one thing that he probably the only thing that he couldn't afford to be doing was to get that cue ball a little bit too wide, because if he was And that's only possible if you're going to be using 2 cushions out there. And of course, if you get that cue ball too wide, you're basically going to be going around the reds and leave it on a straight line to the right corner to be taken. And that was the only way that Zhao was going to get a realistic benefit out of that shot, apart from potentially getting a couple of foul points, which we still haven't seen so far. Now then, Ding, just looking for the reds to be taken into the right corner, just very carefully. Needs to approach this one. Oh, I mean, he's managed to find an absolute rocket out there to be unleashed towards the right corner. But in the end, the rocket got stuck in the pocket out there. Even though he got a little bit of cover on the brown, it's going to be a very interesting one. And he says that it was an intentional shot that he was playing, because you can see, though, the reds that have initiated that launch towards the right corner were nowhere near any other reds. So now then, it's a swerve for Zhao, but wow, that was fortunate. That was very, very fortunate indeed. There wasn't a hand of apology, which suggests that Zhao was trying to initiate that cue ball to be heading straight into those reds. But I mean, I'll tell you what, to be clashing with 9 reds, ping not being available, and for him to be pretty much perfectly on the black in the circumstances and the situation that he did find himself at, you know, certainly had to be pretty fortunate, to say the least. But in the end, you know, he does find himself in a 3-0 lead, so he can afford to be taking risks. And if anything, he has to try and do something that Chris Wakelin wasn't quite able to do against Mark Williams. And Mark said that himself, you know, he felt like if he was 4-0 down, and he was 3-0 down before the 4th frame, Wakelin had a couple of opportunities to try and kill the frame off and be heading to the intermission with a 4-0 lead. He wasn't able to do that. And in the end, 3-0 turned into 3-2, 4-2, and then Williams was able to get himself with a win over 6 frames to 4, which was very impressive there from the Welsh putting machine, making sure that him and John Higgins are once again going to be representing the class of 92 into the quarterfinals and the next stage of the Shanghai Masters tournament. But it felt like the reason why, and I think it's a valuable reason, and it's a sensible reason as well to be called, I think the reason why Ronnie's dropping out of that Class 92 equation every single time there, of course, he can't really be said about the Crucible, because he was playing against Higgins himself, and Williams was able to, I think he was able to get through to the 3rd round, because he certainly got through Kowalski. Can't really remember who he was faced in that round 2 there, but anyway, the reason why, you know, Williams had to play someone like Wakelin, which still, by the way, ranks higher than Ronnie, which tells you a little bit of insight on how many tournaments Ronnie has been playing in the recent couple of years. But he does have a very good record ahead of this season, by the way, because he's played literally nothing 2 years ago, apart from that, you know, one semi-final I think he got in the Xi'an Grand Prix, maybe one quarter-final, and then, of course, the semi-final against Zhao. So he basically has something like 100,000 worth of ranking points to try and defend, which is nothing for a top 16 player, realistically. So the only way is up for him if he's going to be playing a couple of reasonable tournaments here. But yeah, the thing that I was going to lead on to was that Higgins had Lisowski, which was very much a replacement for Carter, which, by the way, he deserves a shout out for taking someone like John Higgins all the way to a deciding black ball. Yes, it was a little bit Jack Lisowski style to go for that black as a match-winning shot from a long range and leave it very much as an easier chance for Higgins. But still, credit when he's due. Lisowski had a very difficult start to the season, but after beating Zhang Anda and, well, as I say, taking John Higgins to a deciding black with 2 centuries out there to be said, it's certainly a promising start there, and improvement at the Shanghai Masters ahead of the China Open. You have to say, Higgins, Williams had a bit of an easier draw than Ronnie, but once again, that's going to be down to them to having a higher ranking place than O'Sullivan himself, and therefore they could avoid playing someone like Karen Wilson until the quarter-final stage, which could have potentially given Ronnie, you know, a warm-up match to try and get himself into a better shape there, which, even though he has played against the wildcard in the first round, then still feel like to go from a wildcard to Karen Wilson is pretty much the same thing as going from the practice table towards the, you know, a top 16 match, which Zhao Gunan will tell you, even though he had a 2-5 deficit against the wildcard and then had a 5-2 lead against Neil Robertson. Incredibly, he's managed to win his match against the wildcard, but wasn't quite able to win any one of those 4 remaining frames against Robertson. And in the meanwhile, you can be thinking about all sorts of stats there, but you can also be thinking about all sorts of chances for Ding Junhui in at least 3 of those opening 4 frames. But for now, it does seem like he will lose every single one of those 4, as he now does find himself 37 points behind, and with an opportunity to be seeing a red to disappear now into the left corner. And the next black that he plays, which I assume is going to be the colour that he's going to try and get that cue ball lined up for, will be the frame ball. And after being 1 shot away, well, 2 shots away technically, on the first frame there from Ding, to being 1-0 up, he's about to find himself being 4-0 down, despite this, well, being supposedly a little bit of a closer match than it was at the Crucible, because Ding, being in a decent form, usually at the starting point of the season, and Zhao having a bit of a history with struggling, being up to speed very much from the get-go, but doesn't seem like that's going to be the case here, because when the chances came to him, he certainly was able to throw a couple of them away, but in the end, he was able to take every single one of those frames that he was playing at, and once again, it's a break of 77 points, make that 78, as he takes the red along the side cushion. And even though he wasn't able to make a century break in the first frame, in the second frame I should say, he had to measure himself with just 90 points to be scored. Now he's got 85 points on the break, and once again he's got a great chance of making this break to be reaching 3 digits, and making this the first century break of the Shanghai Masters. Pretty sure it's going to be at least the 4th one of the season, because of his high-scoring Championship League campaign. In the end, just carefully gets around the brown, gets himself positioned for a shot into the yellow pocket to be taken, and the brown and the blue will take him towards 99 points, as the brown now going to make his way towards the pocket, and then still looking for a 1/12 of a clearance, and the blue barely disappears into the left middle, trying to eke out as much of a gap as he possibly can on the pink, and therefore he tried to eke out a little bit too much, found himself being wrong side of the pink, but anyway, whilst I was explaining that, he's managed to pot the pink, make a century break, and still getting himself lined up nicely for the black, which he is going to take in a brilliant style there from Zhao Xington, leaving his older compatriot absolutely no chance. And I tell you what, he may be your idol, but there's certainly been absolutely no room for sentiment there from Zhao Xington. He has absolutely destroyed Ding Junhui in 2 of those frames to be completely dominant, in 2 of those frames to be won on the final black. But anyway, the result is 4 for Zhao Xington, 0 for Ding Junhui. And Weezer now dropped off the pace a little bit. He only has a 3-0 lead now against Xi Xiaowei. And the world number 3 and the world number 4 do seem to be enjoying themselves right now, as we head on to the intermission and the break of 15 minutes time to see if it is going to be very much the start of the celebrations there as soon as the intermission is going to be over, and Zhao Xington getting over the line at the first hurdle, or is it going to be a bit more of a challenge and a bit of a fight back there from Ding Junhui? Won't be the first time, but certainly he has left himself on the mountain to climb. In 15 minutes time, the break will resume and the players will come back to the table. Stay tuned in.
Open eye, feel the waves cut through me, hypnotized by the sounds I'm breathing in. Hold tight, chemicals collide. Hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Dripping lights paint the skies, all because of you. make it last forever. Stop in time, yeah, I'm surrendering. Hold tight, chemicals collide. Hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Dripping lights paint the skies, all because of you. Dripping lights paint the skies, only you can make me move. You can make me move. Can make me move. Can make me move. You can make me move. Can make me.
I can't believe the night lay waste to all we'd given. But honestly, you've gotta know that this ain't living. But we could run from Elysium and let it burn, let it burn. You've gotta know that nothing lasts forever. I can't believe myself. I never thought that this would be our end, but it's nothing new. And my lover's honesty, I can push it back down if I have to. If you want me to, 'cause we can run. And we can run, 'cause stars they fall all for you. So tell me now, what's left to lose if we run?
in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, 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 won't you let the light shine through? In the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, 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 for you.
Right then everybody, we are now back to the action here as we approach the 5th frame in between Zhao Zikton and Ding Zhuhui, and are we going to see a bit more of the same there of what we have witnessed in the first 4 frames, or is it going to be a bit of a comeback from Ding as it's now going to be down to Zhao Zikton to have the break-off shot, as you can see, and he has basically done exactly the same as the thing that Ding has done in the 2nd frame that has cost him so dearly. That one red that he's left over the left middle at that point was the reason why Zhao Zikton was able to score 90 points at the same visit to the table and has doubled his lead from 1-0 to 2-0. But this time around, as has been the story of the entire match, you know, the red that Zhao Zikton has left is going to be, marginally, I would say, underneath the blue ball line, which makes it impossible to try and pot it into the left middle. But that didn't really stop Ding Zhuhui from trying to pot it into the left corner. And I'm pretty sure he can call himself a little bit lucky there that, you know, the red has pulled up exactly onto the ball cushion, because he would have always been quite close towards the yellow pocket. And in the end, Zhao Zikton is just going to have to try and play the cue ball in behind the black. Let's see if he's actually managed to execute that shot well enough, because if he hasn't, then there could be a chance for Ding to be heading for the red in towards the right middle. But yeah, very weird performance so far from Zhao Zikton, I would say, because you have to say he's brilliant during moments, but you also have to say, you know, he still hasn't quite shown his best form, which I suppose there's always going to be a counterpoint that he didn't really have to, and he still had 2 absolutely brilliant breaks of 90 and 112, which those 2 combined would have been enough there to clear the total points tally that Ding Zhuhui has managed to score over the course of those 4 frames. As you can see, 142 points so far for Ding, 331 for Zhao Zikton. The average break value is going to be based off, you know, the highest breaks for Ding being 24, 25, 28 and 44. And when it comes down to Zhao Zikton, he has not had a top 4 break less than 51. So he's got 4 breaks of 50 plus. 2 of them are going to be 90 plus as well. So a bit of a contrasting performance, as I say, but ultimately there is still a little bit of a chance for Ding to go on a streak, which he needs to be doing now, as he's now eyeing a red to be taken into the green pocket. He needs to try and get that cue ball lined up for the black, and he's played that shot superbly well. And once again, he's going to be the player to get the first chance in a frame. He's done that, attention, on 4 out of 5 occasions. He was the guy to pop the first ball incredibly. He hasn't won any of those frames. And of course, the only time where Zhao Zikton was able to get himself a chance, as the first player at the frame, he was able to take that frame without letting Ding Zhuhui back to the table. That was the 2nd frame, and that was the point where he has scored 90 points without a response there from Ding. Made a little bit of a mess of it at the end, so he wasn't able to make a century break, but nevertheless, he's managed to recover from that ever since and has got himself 100 plus break on the board. Once again, Ding just looking for that left middle. Has got plenty of power behind that shot, and he's got plenty of accuracy once again behind it. And the position is going to be one of the best ones that he's had so far in relation to. He's got 4, I will say, easy reds to try and make his way through on towards the bulk area. And then at that point, he's going to have around 10 or even 9 reds to deal with at the lower end of the table. A couple of them are going to be lined up very nicely for him to start that visit to the bottom half of the table. And at that point, you feel like he's going to have plenty of points in behind of it as well. And at the same time, he's going to have a decent opportunity to try and put the distance in between himself and his opponent here too. For now, then, looking for the brown to be taken. Of course, he still needs to try and focus on getting maximum value that he can. I'm not saying that he needs to play for the brown or blue every single time there, that he's looking to try and get those reds eliminated. That's not why he opted out to go for that top end of the table anyway. His target has to be focusing on the available reds to him, try and make it as simple as he can, which he hasn't really done here. You know, it's a mid-range shot there, but he got right in behind of it, and he's played that red superbly well into the right corner. Now then, he's got a decision to make. He's going to be on the top side of a blue. So he's got the line to try and send the cue ball down towards the lower end of the table, which I said there is going to be a couple of reds, but the thing is, you need to be on the right-hand side of the blue to be able to get through to those reds, which he is, but he's still going to have to play that shot really accurately, and I don't know what on earth has he done there. Unless there is going to be a red that I can't see that he thinks he can. I think he's just played an absolute mess of a shot there. I mean, surely he's not still thinking about taking that red there. Way too much power. But clearly being 4-0 down, it's going to be all-out attack, and he was. The cue ball's gone on a journey of jumping around. All sorts of mess there, but somehow, you have to say, he didn't pot the red, but it doesn't seem like he's left a lot there. Well, I mean, the cue ball got the miles in. Yeah, I mean, that was 100 miles an hour there for the cue ball to be running across the table. Basically, he was trying to cut a red, pretty much the impossible angle into the corner. And before that red even got towards that corner, the cue ball already was close to the yellow pocket. Then the red was towards the right corner pocket out there. But once again, look at that. I say, he didn't really leave him a lot there, because there was one chance, a slim chance, of Zhao taking a red along the black ball cushion into the corner, and of course, as has been the case throughout the entire match, Zhao has taken that red nicely and has now positioned himself perfectly well for a chance to come back in this frame. You know, Ding Zhuyi probably would have been looking to try and get himself at least 40 points worth of reds in relation to the top end of the table, but running and being on the top side of a blue, he decided not to try and recover with the yellow or brown. And in the end, as we found out, that was certainly the wrong decision for him to make. And now the average break value is going to drop down even further. 29 points for Ding Zhuyi exactly, and 65.4 for Zhao Xington, as he's now going on about the business himself. Still not the easiest positions because of how the Reds are going to be positioned quite awkwardly in relation to one another. A couple getting in the way of each other. Referee having a very close look in relation to the waistcoat of Zhao Xington being over those Reds, and in the end, Zhao has gone for probably the sensible option, trying to go for the red in towards the green pocket. He's played that shot superbly well, and once again, look at that cue action that he managed to get on that cue ball, perfectly positioned now for the green if he wants to go down the table, or more logically for the brown, which will allow him to drop that cue ball closer towards the red, the last of the remaining reds at the top end of the table. And of course, if he takes that red with the colour, he will no longer be behind of Ding Zhuyi, which is not going to be the first time that's going to happen. So then, taking that red away, could have been closer to it, to be fair, but once again, the red itself was quite close towards the pocket, so Zhao Xington didn't struggle with that one too much. Now finds himself only 2 points behind now of Ding Zhuyi, and now looking to try and go for the blue to be taken into the right middle. And this is where it gets interesting here, because he's got 2 reds, one on the left side, one on the right side, which are going to be completely out of position, and then he's got 5 more to try and make his way through. And look at that for a shot. I mean, that was absolutely brilliant. Didn't really want to put the black save, but still, I mean, I want to see the replay on that one, because he managed to get the pink away. He managed to miss the pink with the cue ball and get the 3 reds that he was aiming for to be spread out away from each other perfectly well. And the IQ of that shot is actually going to involve the factor of, if he gets those 2 reds out of the way, which he has done, there's no need to be touching the remaining 3 reds, because they're going to be fine anyway. Because the only reason why they weren't fine beforehand was the 2 reds that he's just managed to clear were getting in the way of them. So brilliant shot there from Zhao. Simple. Might seem on the screen, it certainly wasn't simple to try and get that perfect line from the blue whilst missing the pink and getting such a firm contact on those reds. 6-0, 100%. Yeah, I would say it's interesting, because in 4 of those 5 frames, Ding was the first player to score some good points. When I say good points, 20 plus. So he certainly was the first player with an opportunity, but it just seems like he's been very much unable to do anything with those chances. And when it comes down to Zhao Xington, yes, he wasn't clinical in the first frame. He was in the second. He was brilliant in the fourth. The third one was a little bit shaky, but I think the whole reason why it was shaky was because of a lead that Ding Junhui managed to achieve at the opening part of the frame. And Zhao Xingtong going to lose the cue a little bit here because of having an unwanted touch with one of those reds on the side cushion. But to be fair, I mean, I say unwanted touch. Now that red can actually be taken along the cushion, which still is going to be very much a difficult shot for him. But at the same time, there is going to be a possibility for him to take that red away, whereas beforehand he was all down to either double it or have to make sure that the red is going to be a lot more in open play. So on 6-0, I'll probably still say 6-1. I said before the match started 6-2 for me. This match has got this one written all over it, but I was thinking that it depends if Ding is going to be playing well, and I think Zhao is unhappy with himself there, because even though he's about to make the 5th break of 50 plus for himself, in comparison to Ding not making any of those, as he now absolutely demolishes the black in, he's now going to have to go for that red, which I'm pretty sure he can do accidentally beforehand. He's going to have to try and take this red along the side cushion and get himself through to the black once again. So then, a little bit too close. Ooh, I mean, once again, I feel like I was going to make this comment beforehand, but I feel like they are too generous with those pockets in China, you know. And I still feel like there is a little bit of an improvement from what we've seen in the match of Barry Hawkins against Li Beifang, because that was a joke. I mean, the 9th frame, the pink that Hawkins got to win in the frame, I mean, that was probably one of the biggest jokes I've ever seen. It genuinely looked like you were playing pool. I mean, he hit the pink so far onto the side cushion, he wasn't even going to wobble. He should not have even wobbled in the jaws there to me, but he somehow got in. So I think since that point, you know, maybe it was down to the table fitting, maybe it was down to the pockets playing a little bit generous at the starting point of it, but now, you know, but I'm pretty sure it's the other way around about it. So we're going to have to wait and see on what's going to happen. And for the time being, there is still an opportunity here for Zhao Xingtong to finish off with a fantastic century break, as he now gets the frame over and done with, and he's now clearly playing for a little bit of a show here. You know, he could have stayed on the ball colours or the blue, but he clearly knows that he needs the pink for a break of 100 points exactly to be on there. And after having a century break in the 4th frame, well, I mean, Ronnie O'Sullivan made 3 century breaks in a row. It didn't really help him to win that match against Karen Wilson, but he certainly put on a great show for the fans. And now, after having more than double of those points in comparison to Ding Junhui there from Zhao Xingtong's point of view, he's now about to, well, certainly be 4 shots away from making this the 2nd century of the match. Back-to-back centuries as well. And then 5-0 is certainly going to be confirmed, done and dusted there. This could still be, you know, after how many deciders we've seen a lot of those, to be fair. We've seen Zhao Gudong to be involved in 2 of them already. One against Robertson, one against the wildcard. We've seen Joey Long to beat Mark Selby in a decider, probably the biggest shock of the tournament for me so far. And, of course, we have seen Mark Williams, what's his name? Sean Murphy today to be involved in a decider as well. And this match does seem like it's going to have anything but a decider, as now a break of 93 points becomes a break of 100, and it is a century break number 2 there for Zhao Xingtong, which is a little bit surprising that he's actually going to be the player on table 2. I've just noticed that, but I suppose he's, as the reigning world champion, he's going to get a little bit more attention out there. But Zhao Xingtong is getting all of his games to be, well, played to an absolute perfection there, it would seem, with a great record there in terms of stats, in terms of scoring points, and in terms of being clinical, with his chances as well. Ding was the player to have the first chance, but Zhao Xingtong, as he was on 5 of those occasions, was the player to finish off the job, and he did it in fine style. Once again, being so close at some stages of the frame to, well, it looks like the break is over, but then you feel like, well, it's Zhao Xingtong, maybe he's going to think about something, and he certainly did. Every single time there, on each of those occasions, he was able to execute that one about as well as he could have, and now he will be very much down to a great chance for Zhao Xingtong to, well, get himself to a perfect sweep there, and a very much a clean sweep of 6 frames to 0. If he's going to be victorious, I'm pretty sure that's going to be the first match that he's going to end 6-0. Excluding the wildcards, I should have noticed that, because I remember Wakeland managed to defeat one of them. One of them by 6 frames to nil. And I'm pretty sure that was actually the only scoreline with 6 frames to nil. And it was, so far, Ronnie was another player to have a very confident win against the wildcard of 6 frames to 1. After Luling Hao had a very good second frame there. I was very surprised with how badly he started the first one and how well he's played in the second frame respectively. But in the end, we do have 2 of the 4 quarterfinals ready. And to be fair, if you look at what's happening on the first table, even though Zhao was able to take 1 frame away from Wu Yize, it still seems like the reigning champ is certainly going to be looking very nicely to try and get himself through to this revenge, potentially unloading there for Sean Murphy. After his late comeback against Joey Long, he could have a rematch for that World Championship campaign against Wu Yize. Very much to be on the line with him, if Wu Yize is able to find 3 more frame wins. And Zhao Xingtong, respectively, is going to be playing against Neil Robertson if he's able to win 1 more out of the remaining potential 6 frames, which, I mean, I don't even know which is going to be a lot more of an achievement. You know, Ding Junhui winning 6 frames on the bounce, or someone winning the whole tournament, because, yeah, certainly. I know Zhao Xingtong is still a player that cares about momentum a lot, and if and when his game does fall apart, then he can struggle, but I'm pretty sure he's not going to struggle to the extent that he would lose 6 frames on the bounce. Although, stranger things have happened, and we've seen that multiple times last season, where you've seen players to have a 5-0 lead at any stage, any ranking, etc., and then we're still seeing those comebacks. I'm pretty sure Tom Ford and Liam Highfield were involved in one of those as well. Can't remember who won, I'll be honest, but I think it was Tom Ford, actually. I think it was Tom Ford that was leading 5-0, and then Highfield still managed to come back and win that match somehow, 6 frames to 5. So, as I say, wouldn't be the first time Wu Yize found himself in a position in the quarterfinals where he was 4-1 down, still managed to come back and beat Jiang Zheng by 5 frames to 4. And for now, it's a brilliant break-off there from Ding Junhui that has got Zhao Xingtong to be thinking about this one. And, of course, with him probably having the second highest, lowest, I should say, average shot time in relation to seconds taken per shot. You know, moments like this don't really happen too often there to Zhao Xingtong, but it's going to be very interesting to see the way that he's going to try and approach the situation. Clearly trying to be as close to the green as possible. That was a very tight line in relation to him missing out on the green, but in the end, seems to have played that shot absolutely superbly well. And yeah, one thing that will probably be a boost here for Zhao Xingtong's chances of a 6-0 win is that Ding is going to have to throw all the caution out of anything here, out of the chair, out of the table, and just play all-out attack. Every single shot that he sees ahead of him that can be taken in aggressive fashion, he will do. And he's done that in the previous couple of frames, and it's only got worse for him, but I'm pretty sure it's a little bit too late to step back towards playing a safety game, because with all the respect to Ding, he's not going to be able to outplay Zhao Xingtong in a safety battle, especially when he's down to 5 frames to 0. So what he needs to do, if there is still going to be a universe where he does come back from being 6-0 down, is to completely halt the momentum of Zhao Xingtong, and the only way of doing that is doing exactly what Zhao Xingtong done to himself. And this is something that Zhao Xingtong wasn't able to do there, as he misses a long-range shot. But once again, remember, out of the opening 5 frames, despite Zhao winning every single one of them, Ding had the first real opportunities. It wasn't like he was potting just one and scoring 1 point. He had the first real opportunity in 4 of those 5 frames. And the only time when he didn't do that was when he broke off, and that was the only shot that he's played. So, yeah, he's been getting plenty of chances. It's just that he's done absolutely nothing to utilize those chances into frame-winning opportunities. And he still holds that 44 points of a break, which I'm pretty sure came in the first frame as his highest in the match. And in every single one of those frames, by the way, Zhao Xingtong has made a break of higher than 44, which tells you something that you need to know about it. As you can see, 5 breaks of 50 plus there from Zhao Xingtong, 51, 56, 90, 112 and 100 points exactly There you can see confirmation of 200 plus breaks. Now then, this is the time for Ding to be thinking a couple of extra seconds. Doesn't seem like he was happy with the way the cue ball was behaving there on his way towards that red. Maybe just indicating there was a little bit of a wobble on the way of that cue ball and it making contact with that red. But the bottom line is, the safety was played quite well. And once again, you can see the average break, by the way, of 71.2 is absolutely astonishing there from Zhao Xington. When you think about the 5 frames that he's played, and then 29 from Ding Zhuo's point of view, he's just not good enough, and that's probably a very kind way of putting it, but you probably have to give him a little bit of credit for actually trying to stick it with the safety battle. Though, as I say that, he's gone for a bit of a weird shot, and if the cue ball is going to find his way towards the pocket, which he will, that's the first foul points which we're going to see in the entire match here. And of course, they're going to go the way of Zhao Xington. As you can see on your screen there, a foul of 4 points, a ball in hand. And even though the red next to the green is not going to be available to be potted, but you still feel like another weapon of Zhao Xington is about to be unleashed here. That being, of course, the long-range shots. Haven't seen too many of those, by the way, and haven't seen even fewer of those to be made. I've just realised, as he was getting down to hit that shot, I've just realised, I don't actually think we've seen any one of those long-range shots to be made by Zhao Xington, apart from the first frame, where he nailed that one as one of his first points that he scored on his way to that 56 points clearance. Apart from that, I'm pretty sure he didn't have any. But once again, he just proves the point that he's now about to be 5 out of 6 frames where Ding Zhuo has managed to score the first point himself. And so far, he's managed to score 20 points plus on every single one of those occasions. I mean, it genuinely is astonishing that he still hasn't got a frame on the board. And you have to say, the further the match has progressed, the further Ding Zhuo has actually been on every single one of those occasions from getting the frame on the board. So, the first and third frames were probably the ones where you have to say, how on earth did he not get the frame one? But apart from that, it's been 2 centuries, it's been a break of 90 points, and it's been very one-sided there from Zhao Xington. But even when those 2 centuries were made, which is the most astonishing thing, even in those 2 case scenarios, Ding was the one to score 20 points first. And that didn't really stop Zhao Xington from winning the frame and still making a 3-digit break here. But if you go back to the frame 6 here and you look at what's happening ahead of Ding Zhuo, then you can't really, predict on what's going to happen because we've seen it all. And just as I say that, he's lost the cue ball completely. I was just about to say, let's not look ahead of us too much because, we've seen those errors to come from absolutely nowhere. Does seem like he is able to get away with this one though, despite cannoning into the red, which probably was an unwanted touch. He probably was trying to get around it. He's still able to get past the red next to the black. But now, I'm not sure whether he's playing for the black or the pink here, because if the black goes, I think his interest is gonna be to try and stay on the black here, because it gives you a natural angle to try and play for one of the lower reds. If he goes to the pink, then he's going to have to rely on a very good positional shot there, or the red at the top end of the table getting past the green, because I can't really see on what he's going to be able to do here unless I'm misjudging the angle. But I mean, if he just drops the pink in and carefully positions that cue ball to be sort of alongside the blue, and he can still go for that red. No, but he's gone for a full-on shot there off the right side cushion. Brilliant shot there from Ding, because that was the reason why I was thinking about it a little bit sarcastically. That I was like, what's the reason of playing that shot? Because you're just going to get yourself in a dead end, if not this shot, then the next one. But he certainly managed to put a lot of confidence and a lot of trust in his shot there, because it wasn't an easy pink. And especially when you thrash it with 100 miles an hour into that pocket, having so much spin on the cue ball that it bounces away from the right side cushion and he finishes so close to the left one that he was perfectly lined up for that red to be taken into the right corner. Now then, taking the blue for once again to be in that 20 zone. And this time around, played a very nice shot here to get himself a couple more of those reds to be developed. So then 23 points is the lead. Now just looking at the the black for him to try and drop the cue for. Yeah, the only thing that he's missing right now is the black to be available into the left corner. Of course, now he's getting himself the position to be sorted out for the black to go into the right corner now. And yeah, from that point onwards, he should be very much solely focusing on getting those two reds out of the way, because for now, he doesn't have the pink. The blue is a long way away from him in relation to the position of the blue and all these reds. So what he needs to do is to have full control of the black, and you know, that of course will mean getting himself lined up for the black to be taken into both left and right corner. Got one of those reds out of the way. One more to go, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be the next one that he goes for. And then at that point, it's going to be about as straightforward as he possibly can be, despite him not really having a lot more of an insurance in relation to a very few of those reds, which you can call being in a bad position. In fact, probably none of them. And depending on that position of the red next to the green, and what sort of availability in terms of pockets that does he actually have. But meanwhile, Ding is now going to get himself the highest break of the match there, of 47 points here, if he does bot the black, and then he's going to have a great chance of just trying to roll that cue ball up and down in relation to those reds, and the more of them that he removes from the table, the further, of course, he's going to get himself, and the closer he's going to be towards winning the frame. But ultimately, the fewer of those issues he's actually going to have ahead of himself there. A little nudge once again to develop another pack of 3 reds, probably the final nudge of the entire frame here. And now, just because Zhao Xington has been on an absolute roll for centuries, and you know, Ding has struggled to make a break of 50 plus points, which he has done now, doesn't mean that he can't try and, you know, still be hanging in there until the end of the match, which may seem inevitable for now. But you know, if he does it 3 times in a row, then he makes 3 centuries just like Ronnie did, all of a sudden 5-3 down, a couple more mistakes from Zhao Xington as he was on that ball in hand. You know, it's probably not the only, of course, but the only attacking shot that he's played in the entire frame here, which doesn't really happen that often. But now it is going to be a frame ball very much on the horizon here for Ding Zhuohui, which is going to be, you know, the black will put him 67 points clear, and then he'll be down to 67 at the table. So then the next red will ensure that Zhao Xington will need 2 snookers at least. I'm pretty sure he's going to actually need 3 snookers as soon as this red disappears. So basically no chance for him to come back to the table. And yeah, Ding certainly managed to improve on that previous record of highest break there in the match. He felt like if he was able to do that in the first frame rather than the 6th one, it could have actually been a lot closer of a match here in the end. It's only 1 break, and it's still going to be 5-1, which doesn't make you feel like you need to put things into context, but it's still very nice to see Ding fighting back and you know, actually being patient for once, which was very surprising for me at the starting point of the frame. He played the long game. He was very much down to happy to be sitting there and playing safety shots, which is not often you see that with him. Then he had to wait for a mistake. Okay, fair enough, but you know, Zhao Xington didn't make too many of those in the match so far, so that when he has 88 points later, you have to say Ding has had a very good frame, and probably, you know, very much on par with those 3 frames of Zhao Xington, which have allowed him to have breaks of 90, 100, and 112 points. Ding is now going to have a break of 95 of his own, looking to try and make it the first century break for him too. It was always going to be a very quick match, which for 6 frames being 2 hours is brilliant, to be fair, you have to say, including the intermission and all the breaks in between those frames. But yeah, it was always going to have a reputation of a very high scoring match too. And now, the latest 3 frames have certainly made this match to live up to the expectations, as Ding runs himself a little bit thick on the red, so he's going to have to try and take this one in towards the left corner. He wasn't able to do that, but in the end, a break of 103 points will boost his average break massively from 29 to 41.3, still nowhere near the 73.1 from Zhao Xington, but still in the fight there from Ding. And it's now going to be Zhao Xington 5, Ding Zhuohui 1. The Dragon is still in this one, Although it probably at this stage seems like it's just a question of time until the dragon will lose the remaining fire within himself. Let's have a look actually how Weezer and Zhao are doing. And Zhao is having a bit of a comeback out there. He's got some really good breaks going in the latest couple of frames, and he's about to make, another break of 50 plus out there, it would seem. And now still looking to try and get that gap down to Weezer. So he was 3-0. It's bound to be 3-2 out there. So if you feel like Ding Zhuhui is getting closer, then Zhao is certainly getting closer to the reigning world champion. And of course, remember, Weezer to me is probably going to be one of the most dependent players when he comes down on form. So he has broken that rhythm before, to be fair, at the World Championship. But, that was very much a campaign of a lifetime for him. Let's see if he's actually going to be able to respond with it here again, because he's certainly going to have plenty of things to try and discover until that point. But for now, doesn't look too bad for him either here. And he's still positioning himself to be in the lead of 3 frames to 2. Meanwhile, Zhao Xingtong is about to break off once again for the 7th frame here. So that means he's going to have a 4th break off. And remember that during the previous 3, every single time, he was always down to Ding Zhuhui to be scoring first points and scoring significant points as well after there was a break off from Zhao Xingtong to be made. So let's see if the tendency will continue. For now, the tendency was broken to a certain extent, with Ding finally able to make a good break, and what a break it was. More than 100 points out there. Very impressive indeed, without, of course, needing even needing the last raid, which gets you extra 35 points. So he was going for 138 in the end, which out of 147 was a very, very solid break indeed, especially if you consider the position and what he was when he just came to the table. Been able to improve the position very quickly and got himself into that window of being within a touching distance of winning that frame. In the end, that's what he's done, but I'm afraid it's not going to be quite enough there for him to win the entire match. Although, just as I said, Zhao Xingtong and his break-off shots have been absolutely dreadful, and I'm pretty sure there's another mistake in the making there for him, because this red is going to be one of the easiest ones that you can think about. The cue ball is nowhere near on the ball cushion, and at the same time, he's now got a chance of taking this red away into the left middle. Oh, he doesn't want to lose the cue ball. Oh, look at that. What a tantalizingly close that was in relation to the bounce of the cue ball. Just about misses the red, and he's still going to get himself positioned for the black. Probably just about as well. Hey mate, hope you're well. I'll try and tune in while Neil was playing Bedtime Down Under. Yes, absolutely. Nice to see you, my friend, as well. And yeah, ultimately, of course, Neil will play against the winner of this pair. For now, still looking like he will be Zhao Xingtong, but as I say, you never quite know. If Ding does get his cue together, get his tip together, get his technique together, get that elbow into the position that he should be in, very straight, and yeah, he's got all the tools that he needs to try and take this game away from Zhao Xingtong. Whether he's got the tools to try and win 6 frames in a bounce, probably going to be another matter, and the answer is no, without the drop-off from Zhao. But we've seen it before. It doesn't mean that we will not see it just because it's the world champion, although you still feel like, with what we've seen so far in the match, any one of those mistakes, especially when it's going to be coming during a break-building chance there for Ding, when those mistakes came, Zhao Xingtong was always there with a smile on his face and very much a phrase every single time to be said, well, thank you very much, I'll take that, and you won't have another chance like this in this particular frame. Very interesting shot there that Ding has played, and when I say interesting, I want to say something else, because I don't really understand what he's doing here. Okay, so he's got the reds pretty much on the pink spot, but he's nowhere near it, first and foremost, and also, in relation to the angle, it's going to have to be a very good shot there to get the red in, but also he's going to have to be putting himself under pressure to get on the black there. He's done both of those variables, to be fair. Got plenty of Q action on the white, and he's still going for a potential 147 here, but of course with the previous shot and the way that he's played it, the chance of 147 are going to be absolutely, well, pretty much I would say 0, but at the same time, Ding is not really a rookie when it comes down to making those maximum breaks. So it could still be a window for it. For now, 4 reds, 4 blacks. About to make it the 5th red. Gets a big bounce on the cue ball, which he needed. And then once again for the black. So the reason, yeah, so there's 2 reds on the right side cushion. There's not more of any problem of any kind. The pink is out of position as it always is going to be when you're going for a maximum, but it's quite close towards the left side cushion as well. But apart from those 3 shots that he has to play potentially, and of course still making sure that he's actually going to be committed to be taking a maximum on. In this position, I don't really feel like there's going to be anything that would sort of make him feel like he shouldn't be doing that, because he's still, and probably will be, until at least the 9th frame in a position of he's got nothing to lose. And he may as well try and keep those easier reds, which at the point of him potting them all, he should be able to win the frame comfortably. Of 3 more that he's got available, make that 2 as he takes the first one. And now then looking to try and get the black into the left corner. Still positioning for that red to be taken into the right middle. And then he's going to have a natural angle to try and drop that cue ball back for the black again. And that will get him up to 64 points if there is going to be another combination of a red and a black in the making. So, as I say, another break of 50 plus. And now it's going to be 159 points without answer. So something that we haven't really seen at all from Ding Zhuo. And that's probably going to be, you know, this frame and a half, I think he's probably scored about the same number of points as he has scored in the first 5, which is very, very impressive. It doesn't seem like he's about to stop here. You can see only 100 points right now. He's behind of Zhao Xington, and yet the scoreline is still going to be with 5 frames to 1. He was getting closer to 5-2, but the reason I say is that he might have to forget about the maximum here for a while. He has overrun massively for this red. I mean, it doesn't really have to forget about it, because the only color he can play for is the black. But he needs to make sure he gets this red in, and he has. Ooh, is he unlucky? He's got one of those reds to be coming in the way. Seems to be looking positive there, which clearly suggests that there is going to be just about enough room there for the black to go underneath that red. So then, it's going to be pretty much halfway towards that maximum to be the reality. But still, as I say, the pink and 2 more reds are still going to be a great problem for that to be the case. But now, forget about the maximum for a second. We could see 4 centuries to be made one after another ever since the 4th frame, the 5th frame, the 6th frame, and now so 27 points away from the 7th frame as well. Now the red goes in, so that's frame over and done with. Once again, very quick. And another stat for you, 6 out of 7 times now, Ding Zhuo had the first chance to score some points, and he has scored some points every single time on 6 out of those 7 frames. So it does seem like he's got something stuck in his eye out there. But yeah, I mean, the easier red to be taking is going to be the red into the right corner, but it's not really going to be a way for him to get on the black. So it's probably where you have to take it away from your comfort zone. But even though he still takes that red away nicely, and remember, he was stuck at 29 points to be the average break for him throughout the match, with 44 being the highest. He's now managed to get himself through. A great chance of getting through back-to-back centuries here. And you can see ball spotted, 13 balls less there for Ding Zhuo. But the best that he can manage here is going to be 5-2 of a scoreline, which once again just tells you, if he's been more clinical, could have been a lot closer of a match. And if anything, he could have been not comfortably, but he could have been certainly in the lead out there and trying to pressure Zhao Xington to be the one feeling it a little bit. In the end, you feel like it's probably going to be this stage where nobody feels any pressure because Zhao Xington is too far ahead, or was, and Ding Zhuo was too far behind now. But you feel like this frame is probably the last one where, next one I should say, is probably the last one where Zhao Xington still is going to be feeling comfortable. If he loses that one too, and 5-0 becomes 5-3, that's where you feel like there's going to be either another Jack Lisowski against Zhang Anda, where Lisowski had a 5-0 lead, he then lost 4 frames on the bounce, but still got over the finish line. Or it could be, you never know, another Tom Ford against Highfield, Another Bingham against, can't remember who it was, Selt in the previous season. But now, I mean, that's not necessarily the way that you wanted to try and make contact with those reds. I mean, there's still a chance for Ding to try and get this red along the cushion. He's on 104, so still going for that mythical, going for that phantom break of 147. Wouldn't be the first player from China to make it. Chang Minyu has done it. Xiao Guodong has done it in this tournament, despite only playing 2 matches. And yeah, Liam Highfield, actually, you know, the player that I've mentioned because of that thing about Tom Ford with a 5-0 lead becoming a 6-5 loss. You know, he's also made a maximum 7 in his qualifiers for the British Open. So then let's see. Ding has got the tools, as I say. We've seen those reds to be potted. Murphy's done this one today when he needed to win the frame against Zhao Yilong. Great pressure on that one. Probably equally as much of a pressure as there's going to be now. Now then. And he's got it. Once again, he did wobble a little bit into the front jaw, but these pockets tend to be forgiving. And it's now going to be 105 points here for Ding Zhuyi. So the question is, what sort of angle does he have on the black? Can he try and get behind this red for the shot into the middle, for the shot into the corner, or for the shot into the yellow pocket out there? On the right side cushion, he's got the pace, but he doesn't seem to be happy with it straight away. Well, I mean, there is still a line potentially to try and take this red away in towards the green pocket. And as I say, the pockets have been forgiving. So I don't think it's over just yet. Now then, needs to get this red in, and then it will all come down to the pink. The line looks good. Ooh, not quite. I don't know why he's played that with so much power, you know. He could have wobbled the red in there, but in the end, it's all smiles there for Ding Zhuyi. He knew it was going to be always a long shot, but in the end, the long shot couldn't win the maximum for him. It is still going to be a brilliant break of 112 points there. He has scored 215 points in the latest 2 frames. He has scored 130 in the previous 5. Ding Zhuyi certainly trying to get himself back in the action, but at the same time, Zhao Xingtong still leads him by 5 frames to 2. And until the very much end point of this match, he's still going to be very much in the lead and in a great position to try and get himself over the finish line, as Weezer, after losing out 2 frames on the bounce to Si Jiaowei, now finds himself in a high scoring position here with plenty of reds available. Been on a scoring chance himself and now trying to go for the red in towards the left corner here. So still plenty of chances there for Zhao Xingtong to try and get over the finish line, but with this one, he will always be down to the 9th and the 10th frame. Until that point, there's not really a point talking about a comeback, Ding's mounting comeback. Well, he is for now. I think he's done superbly well in the recent couple of frames, but I still think he's a long way away from Zhao Xingtong, and you know, that's why I think it's going to be a little bit more frustrating for him, because you feel like if he was able to get those chances to be put away earlier, then he could have easily been in the lead at least 4 frames to 3. If anything, he could well have been finding himself in this position of leading by 5 frames to 2, as I say. Out of 7 frames, he was the one to take the first chance in 6 of them, and the only time he didn't was after a poor break-off shot. So, you know, that makes 2 of them now, because in the frame 7 and in the frame 2, there was an exact carbon copy out there of a 90 points break to be made from Zhao Xingtong after a poor break-off. And then where Ding Zhuyi has played 1 shot in the entire frame, and then Zhao Xingtong has played 1 shot in the entire frame of number 7, and you know, Ding has managed to, you know, go for a 112, nearly went for a 147, not quite in the end, but still in there with a shout. But for me, this is probably the last frame where Zhao Xingtong can feel no pressure at all, and then when he gets to 5-3, it's still going to be only halfway there, so you still probably have to say, you know, Xingtong is going to be well in the lead. But, you know, at that stage, if he was able to win 3 frames on the bounce, who says he can't do it again? But for now, it is Ding Zhuohui to be breaking off, and as you can see, he's got 109 balls spotted to 115 of Zhao Xington. Pretty much same number of the points scored as well across those 7 frames, but of course Zhao Xington dominated the frames number 4 and 5. Ding Zhuohui has dominated the frames number 6 and 7, and then there were a couple more of them that were very, very close, and one on the last black there. So once again, interesting to see the body language and the mindset here of Zhao Xington, as he's been left with a chance, and he's not going to take this long red. So then, once again, there is an invitation there, very much over the pocket there for Ding Zhuohui, and yeah, as I say, I mean, I'm surprised with what I'm seeing here from Xington, even though, you know, it's not even down to the red that he's left, but he was leaving that cue ball in a position as if he knew he couldn't miss, or he still feels like he can afford to miss, which is a dangerous thing to be doing, as Ding loses control of the cue ball a little bit, wobbles it in the jaws, but still ends up perfectly on the blue. I'll tell you what, I mean, he certainly was smiling to himself, and the hand of apology was raised because he could not have played that shot any better, despite it's one of those times where, you know, the teacher asks you how did you work out that equation, and you say, I don't know, but you still got the answer right. And that's exactly what happened to Ding, and now trying to use that advantage of getting a little bit of fortune into playing that cue ball into those reds, getting those reds to spread out away from each other. Not to the greatest of the effects, but still got a couple of them to be available. And now then, a chance for him to try and go for the red into the right middle. Probably wants to try and stay on the blue here for a while, because once again, as he was at the beginning of the 6th frame, he's got the black to be limited in terms of its availability. And once again, it's a little bit weird of a positional shot here for the cue ball. I don't know why he was aiming for the pink here, because, I mean, the pink is going to go into nowhere here. So he needed to try and keep that one until the end, but clearly run way too far for the blue to be potted, so now has to go for the pink. He's got no other option. And just carefully trying to cut that one into the backhand jaw to make sure he opens up the angle nicer for him. But this is why I said I don't really understand why he's done it, because unless he wants to try and go for the red above the black, which will give him the necessary angle, and potentially could even try and remove the other red from the black, sort out 2 issues with a single shot there. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone if you like, and he has done that, so he's done really well. Once again, very risky those shots are, because when you play for the black and you try and make that one work, if you don't make it work, then you don't really have a colour to play for, but he has done so. And now, on the break of 21 points and counting, making it 115 balls spotted for each of the players. And still looking to try and make a significant lead, build up a significant lead there for himself. The position is always going to be improving as he removes more and more of those reds, because the position is not bad here. It's that it's all a little bit congested here in the main area of the reds, but he's got a couple of safe ones, which first and foremost, of course, is going to be a bit of insurance if he does make a mistake and Zhao Xington comes back to the table. Though I don't really mean this mistake this early. I mean, it is the break of 29 points, but it does seem like that honeymoon and the bubble of centuries is about to come to an end here, because that was, unless he is going to go and pull off a Ding Zhuohui move, well, risky, trying to cut the red with pretty much invisible angle. He's gone for it, he's got it. Is he going to have the position on the colour? Well, he will, by a fraction, but he will. Got the blue to be cannoned away. Oh, he's got the pink available. Okay, that changes things slightly, but it still puts him into unknown a little bit, because the pink itself is not the easiest shot, but also where are you going to be finding the shot on the red? And the answer is, the pink wasn't the easiest shots there. That was enough to stop Ding Zhuohui. And once again, well, even though it was a brilliant cut previously, now it was the break of just 30 points, which would prove to be the end of Ding Zhuohui for the time being. Whether it would be the end in the entire frame, would have to wait and see. But Zhao Xington gets the first chance, pretty much, I'm pretty sure, in those 3 frames there, because one of them was a break-off, and that was the only shot that he's played. So far, before he's just spotted the red, he's played only 1 shot in this frame too, so Can't really remember a lot about 6th frame, but yes, that one was the ball in hand when he was trying to go for the reds. Yes, he literally has made 3 mistakes in 3 frames, and yeah, now he finds himself, instead of 5-0 in the lead, he now finds himself 5-2 in the lead and 30-0 down. But still a very interesting position for him to try and solve here. And interesting doesn't necessarily mean a good thing here for him, because it's a very difficult thing, I would say. It's 29 points of a deficit. It's a very awkward one because you feel like you probably will need every single one of those reds. As he now plays the brown, look at that cue ball control, brilliantly struck there of 1, 2, 3, 4 cushions, and look at that, brilliantly lines up for the red. Now he needs to sort out the issue of the pink and the black being in the way of each other and the reds. And once again trying to eke out the angle, be as close to the pink as possible without not seeing too much of it so that you can actually get through to the black now. Try and pot this one away into the corner, and once again using the handbrake of the reds to stop the cue ball whilst developing them at the same time. Now finds himself 17 points behind here, looking to try and go for the reds, carefully cuts that one into the corner, and this is probably the time for him to go for the pink, although the angle probably, yeah, I feel like he can hold the cue ball. He doesn't need to be playing in behind the red for the middle. He can just try and take the pace away from the cue ball, and he's still going to have plenty of reds to choose from into the left corner. So that was very much the biggest problem for him, to try and sort out the issue with the black and the pink, sort out the reds next to the black, and now, since he's got those colours sorted out, he's only going to find himself 10 points behind. He may actually be able to get away with leaving one of those reds away without passing here, and still getting the match ball earlier than that. As now you can see he's got 4 reds available, and then he's got 2 more in a very difficult position. So 4 reds with, let's say, the pink, that's going to be 28 points, which will get him 25 points clear. Yeah, you will actually need every single one of them, which not a great boost to him, especially with the reds being the only problem at the table. So he will need every single one of them, which does make it a little bit more difficult, but you know, for now he gets to enjoy scoring a couple of free points, if you like, for himself. Can try and take the mind off things a little bit, but not too much. He still needs to make sure, as he gets closer towards taking the last of those 3 available reds, as he now makes it 2 available reds, he still needs to be getting the perfect position on the black to either get himself in behind of that red onto the left side cushion. I feel like he's got the perfect position of it just to try and get in behind of it and flick it towards the right middle, as if it was a big bat hit for him. Or he can try and just drop that cue ball to be lined up for the black ball cushion. Or, as we figured out, of course, he would have to do both of them to try and win the frame and therefore the match in the current visit to the table. But no surprise that he's going to try and clear up those reds first. Now then, he gets himself into 28 points of elite, so technically speaking, I mean, if he takes that red on the black ball cushion with the black itself, you should be able to be 36 points clear with 35 at the table. So, I mean, he's still going to take a lot of precision there for him to get that red to be guided towards the right corner whilst getting that cue ball to bounce away so that he gets the position on the black here. So, but of course, the bonus of it is that if he gets those 2 shots in, doesn't really have to worry about the red on the left side cushion. So he got the red in. Made that look very easy as well. Now then, 29 points of a lead. Can he try and get in behind of that red? Because Dean, of course, is going to try and fight back on this one. And, well, he didn't get in behind of that red. He sort of glatted into the red directly from the black. And now does find himself 36 points clear, 35 at the table. So then, once Snook can eat it, don't know whether Zhao wants to try and take this one towards the yellow pocket. He probably wants to. You know, that's how he started the match, and that's how he's going to finish it as well. As soon as that red disappears, there's not going to be a chance for Ding Zhuo to come back to the table. And I tell you what, I've said this is going to be the end of the centuries. Well, Zhao Xington has been proving people wrong for about 3 years now. 2 years, I should say. And can he do it for one more time here and make 3rd century for himself? He had a break of 112, 100 points exactly, and he's now looking to try and make it a break of 101 points. Looked impossible after he had 107 ahead of himself, but with his high scoring ability and brilliant cue ball control, he's been able to take that position away on pieces. He's now managed to win that match very comfortably in the end, despite losing out on those 2 frames. And yeah, one thing I would have to say, take no credit for it, but I did say Kyle Wilson was going to beat Ronnie 6-4, and I did say Xington was going to win this one 6-2, so... But I tell you what, can't complain about this one, because this has been an absolute brilliance from Zhao Xington, the world champion, entertaining here. Not only the crowd, but also all the people watching. And at the end of it all, there is going to be a break of 94 points, which is about to become a century break number 3 for him. The 5th one in the entire match. And Zhao Xington finishes the clash in style. And it is going to be the clash of generations. And Zhao Xington is going to come out on top once again. 8 times they've met in between each other. The first 4 of those meetings now have been won by Ding Zhuyi, but the latest 4 have been dominated by Zhao Xington. And the Cyclone will play Neil Robertson tomorrow at the afternoon session here in Shanghai, as now once again looking to try and make his name to be into the last 4 and into the last 2 potentially. For the first time since 2017, we could have a Chinese player in the Shanghai Masters final. Brilliant performance there from Zhao Xington. There's not a lot that he could have done in frames number 6 and 7, but in the end, it was more than enough for him to try and make this a very comfortable win at the end. And you can see just how, noisy it is starting to get in the crowd. Anyway, thank you very much for everyone tuning in, and feel free to be tuning in tomorrow as well. Neil Robertson against Zhao Xington at the afternoon session is going to be the stream, and then potentially, depending on how Weezer is going to finish off his match against Xijia Wei, which is going on very nicely, we could see the rematch of Sean Murphy against Weezer for that World Championship final. He went to a decider last time around, and that was best of 35. Let's see what's going to happen in the best of 11 out there tomorrow, as we're through to the quarterfinals, and Zhao Xington is going to have the biggest smile of them all. Thank you very much for tuning in, and stay tuned in for more action of the Shanghai Masters.